Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. We're back. We're back at the home base, and joining me, as always, is Tom. So, Tommy, how you doing this evening, brother?
Hello, friends.
That was a weird voice.
Yeah, I went for like British nanny.
That's okay. You're Mary Poppins, y'all. So I watched the first movie when I was stuck in my hotel this week. How about that?
Something good to watch.
It is. It's really good to watch Guardians anytime, any place, anywhere. So this week, obviously, we're recuperating from everything. This is actually, as you know, the show is late because I was traveling. I actually just got home for basically the first time since last Sunday. I've been on the road almost consistently, so it's been a busy week and a half.
I trust that you've gotten a lot of hobby done.
I have managed in the few hours where I came home in between flights and travels. I actually did manage to get some hobby on, because of course I did. But
you are a gross individual.
Thank you. We'll come to that later. So as always, let's start out with the news, shall we?
Let's start with Batman.
Okay, sure.
Batman. Rumor engine that went up yesterday.
Or
sure. Was that yesterday or was that today?
It was yesterday. They go up on Tuesdays now.
Yeah. So that happened. So that's news. The rumor engine goes up on Tuesdays now.
Okay. I will share here. We'll all take a look at it together. We'll see what Tom thinks it is. The community team
clearly just wants us to ruminate more before we get to talk about it on the show.
Sure. There you go. That's what it is.
Is that you, Batman?
Why do you think it's Batman? Because it looks like a batarang. Is that your thought here?
It does. It does look like a batarang. So I am inclined to actually go with something undeady. Like it could be like one half of a helm. You know, because it looks a lot like the helms that are on like the Blood Knights and stuff like that.
Okay.
Or something completely new for 40K, like a completely new race.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Gotcha. Those are pretty far out calls.
Yeah, they are.
Fair enough. I do think it's obviously the crest of a helm. I will agree with that. Like this is the top and the head is right here.
Skaven.
I have no idea who it is. I mean, it does like AOS 40K. I don't know. It looks somewhat, it has like a lot of the angle of an elf influenced thing.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But like, my point is like, it feels somewhat like the Yniad or whatever, like their little headpieces. Cause she has the one girl with the long cape has the like little top knot spikes.
Yep.
They're kind of in this same order here.
Yep.
But it could just as easily be any other elf related thing or anything like that. It's hard to say. It's beyond. It's definitely the crest of a helm. I have no idea.
Yeah. Yep.
Because I mean, it could just be like 20 different things. What's funny is how many with the Necromunda reveal, how many things got spoiled that we had thought might be CLV things, but then aren't.
Yep.
So that's unfortunate. Like the tentacle, famously, right, that we had looked at. The tentacle has been proven now to be something else. So,
are you watching chat? Like, there was just this, obviously, like, this pent-up desire for people to interact. Because, like, there are, like, 800 responses of people talking back and forth.
That's cool. Good.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. That's all I'm saying.
Sadly, the one item, by the way, I had also called for the Sisters of Battle was a Necromunda item. Boo.
Oh, yeah.
Many of the things were the Iron Jaws skirmish force. The Death Guard thing was confirmed as we originally said from the art, so that was nothing new there.
Okay, no, I'm gonna go for this. No, I think this is Skaven now that I think about it. Because I'm thinking about the headpiece of the nose blade off of the Death Runner.
Sure, that's
actually
like a helm, I do. It's a blade. That's a blade, like That's a forward-facing blade.
Right. So like think about this as a forward-facing blade arcing up. So we're actually seeing like that bottom arc is actually coming up off the helm, maybe.
Okay.
And if this is Skaven, we already have a Blood Bowl team. I don't think it'll be AOS. So I'm guessing maybe Shadespire, Skaven Shadespire.
I mean, sure. I mean, it could be. Why not? I don't. It's not like I would see any kind of real Skaven release. So if it were to be rats, sure, that would be where it was. But I mean, at the same time, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it has that feeling to it as well. But if tomorrow it turned out to be an elfy thing, I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah, I see that. Yes, it is fairly weird and like sharp weird enough that I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had told that Kenny Lowell pointed that out. They had said that more Warhammer Quest support was coming.
Also true.
It could be something related to Warhammer Quest, like something Skaven-y in one of the Warhammer Quests. Like I could see having like another city base right instead of Hammerhall, something else, and having like the whole city infested by Skaven. Like that seems like that could be a very viable possibility.
I support that.
I know you do. I know you do.
I mean, rats burrowing up from underneath the city are you know, pretty famously the Skaven thing. So anything that brings that back into the world, I am all about.
Mm-hmm. And that would make sense. Like I could easily see that, and then they don't have to do a large release. Actually, I don't know. I take that back. Maybe not, because I don't even know what kits they would use. Like what would they put in those kits? Like they're not going to put any of the old Skaven. Maybe Pestilence.
Everything Eshin. I mean, everything Eshin is so far out of date, right? That's the problem.
Yeah. So like they could put a couple new sprues and maybe some Pestilence.
I mean, like, look, all I'm saying is let's just like get some new Night Runner, Gutter Runner models, and I'd be perfectly happy to go. If they could have an excuse to get those out through something else, I would be fine with it. Like if they're going, we know they're doing like the 3 cities box set, right? The combinations of all the figs.
Yeah.
It could be neat to have enemies of those cities as also a release or something like that, right? I don't like, we saw those 3, those are all good guy box sets.
Yes.
Right. And it would make sense to also have maybe some bad guy box sets.
Like the Scourge of what such and such city.
Yeah, which could also
in the Doom of such and such or whatever.
Right, which by the way could contain old models.
Yeah. No,
like those box sets do sometimes have old like fine cast and stuff in them.
Yeah, I could easily see like what were the cities' names? Like
Anvil something, Hammer something,
Anvil Guard or something. So like the Scourge of Anvil Guard and have like a bunch of Plague Monks with some Chaos Warriors and Magath Lord or something.
Sure. Yeah, like Nurgle's attacking one, Zinch is attacking one, like a combined Skaven and Khorne.
Well, you do whatever. One. Like you probably do like an Iron Jaws one, like an Iron Jaws Chaos one. You do something like that.
Well, yeah, sure.
You do you do a destruction, and then you could do like a destruction, a death, and a chaos.
Sure. I mean the good destruction story, the one I just read, the little snippet about like the Iron Jaws when they had the thing about famous sieges when they were talking about sieges on the website, and they talked about the Iron Jaws assaulting like a chaos fortress,
a
hell fortress, and killing all the chaos people inside,
and then leaving the fortress.
No, and then propping all of the chaos people up on the edge of the battlements and hiding so that the Stormcast would think it was still an active chaos thing and come fight them. Which is like that is some Mork level cunning right there. I appreciate that. Like they just stuck them all against the walls to make.
Like the Stormcast are going to come. Yeah, this will bring them.
Yeah, as long as there's chaos dudes, the Stormcast will eventually show up. So they knew that would get them there. So I enjoyed that. You gotta love those guys.
Always in for a good row.
Yes, it specifically said because they wanted to have a good scrap, and that
yeah. There you go. Boom. So Rumor Engine, Skaven-ish, Shadespire, Skaven and Warhammer Quest, sure. Nova Blackout. So we had a couple events this last weekend. Vince, how about you? So you talked to us at the beginning of Nova, which is what our last show. How about you talk to us about the end of Nova?
Sure. So I mean, overall, it was a great convention. It was like there were like GW did a lot of seminars throughout this.
Cool.
So Pete, Andy, Everybody else there had some good seminars where they sat in. They answered a lot of people's questions. They did one specifically on the GHB. And like so Thursday night they had a seminar just kind of talking with the design studio. And the design person they had there, and I don't remember his name, and I'm very sorry to him. I need to look up his name because that's incredibly rude. But it was a busy weekend and I've been traveling all day, so please forgive me. But he was both the person who was the lead designer on Shadespire, which is one of the reasons he was there. And they did an awesome Shadespire seminar as well, which let me tangent for a moment. So at the Shadespire seminar, they were talking about, Shadespire and the factions and the 4 that are going to be there. And like, actually, when they showed us the box, I don't think we'd actually seen the box previously. No. But when you look at the box, like they passed the box around, it has all 4 of the factions on the outside of the box. Yeah. That's so funny. Like, it's not really any mystery there.
Surprise! Iron Jaws and Undead are coming.
Right. So if we ever would have seen the box, you would have known it was Iron Jaws. But
that's funny.
Yeah. So, and by the way, my favorite death rattle, having looked at them then close up, because they have like all of them lined up. There's one of the skeletons that is just wearing like a shawl. He just has like a babushka on with a scythe and no pants. And he's like the only one without a loincloth or pants. And it's the funniest looking model to me because Steve just didn't feel like pants were necessary in the afterlife.
Damn it! I was going to say, oh, that's just Steve.
Exactly. Like all the rest of them still were like, felt it necessary to have like a tabard or a loincloth or pants or something.
He's like, I'm swinging free.
Yeah, this guy throws on the shawl and he's good to go. He like, I'm guessing that was a grandma skeleton. It has that feel about it. So anyway, so they're passing around the cards for everybody to look at. Okay. And they said, you get 96 cards in the box. Like these are the cards that are, by the way, like the objectives and you use for your deck and your upgrades and all this kind of stuff. Sure. And they're passing around the cards and they say there's 96 in the box and we're going to release a lot more. And it'll be pretty soon after. So, okay. So I'm looking at the cards and just kind of glancing at them. And I noticed down in the corner, there's a little thing on the card that I have that says like 25 of 437. Okay. And so then I grab I grab the person's next to me and it says like 26. And I walk around and I look at somebody else's and it says 243 or something.
Yeah.
And so I asked Pete, I was like, are there 341 additional cards being released with Shadespire? And he's like, if that's whatever it says on the card minus 96, then that is correct. You've cracked the case.
Eagle eye, Vince.
That's right. That's right. I know how this, like, Magic Sets did that in the, like, very early on too. They had like the number thing. So anyway, we would always know like what the card was. You can always, it was a thing for Magic Sets that you could always tell like where it was because the way they were printed and the numbers and stuff like that. So anyway, I thought that was funny. So yes, clearly there's a lot more cards coming for that to build your deck. So all right, tangent over. That made me laugh.
That's amazing.
It was pretty great. So the in the design seminar, the lead designer of Shadespire was also the lead writer of the Caradron Overlords book. Okay.
Go on.
So now I wasn't going to necessarily beat him up for the KO thing. Okay. Like I was willing to sort of let this be.
Yep.
And then he starts talking.
I know how the story ends. It just makes me smile. Continue.
So he starts talking about KO and like that he worked on the book and he really likes him and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, so I raised my hand. I raised my hand and I said, well, I don't know if you have judge shows or police procedurals over in the UK. I assume you do. And sometimes there'll be a courtroom scene and somebody will introduce something and they'll be like, well, you can't say that. And then the person's like, well, Judge, he opened the door to this, right? That's a famous move. Like you get the prosecutor or defense attorney to bring it up and then that allows you to talk about it. This is like, okay. So I'm like, you opened the door to this. So let's talk about Caradron Overlords. So I asked, what happened? Kind of what was, I just asked about the story. And they were very open about it, very frank. And honestly, I wish that they had shared this story publicly. I mean, I understand why they don't. It's probably not the best community article. But I thought I would share it because.
So let me just preface this because I know how the story ends.
Sure.
I agree. Like, had they opened with this, I'd have been like, oh yeah, if shit happens, that sucks.
Right. So
go ahead.
You know, I get it. It's tough to write this article, but nonetheless, I do wish they had done this as a formal article, but I'll share it nonetheless.
This happened in a public forum, so Vince is not
this is
confidential. Yeah.
No, this was absolutely like a public discussion that was there. It was nothing. This isn't like off the record or anything. And like I said, they were very frank about it. And moreover, I agree. When I heard the story, my thought was, okay, that all makes sense now. So here's what happened. With the Thunderers thing, basically it was a mistake. I mean, Pete was very frank about it. So the rules are written based on the models. When they get the model designs, as I understand it, their understanding of what the kit was going to contain was different than what the kit actually contained. And hence the rules were written inappropriately and they didn't realize it until sometime after everything had went to print. And so they decided the best move was to redo the Thunderer scroll. That sucks. And he was very frank. He didn't try to excuse it. He just said it was a mistake. We made it. It sucks.
Well, not only that, like that's not the part of the story that I felt like was
I'm going to get there to the rest.
Yeah.
So then I said, okay, like honestly, the Thunderer thing, I understand. Like people have pointed at the other older units.
Yeah.
Right. That don't
like Storm Fiends. Yeah, sure. Like we've been playing in this world for 3 years with Storm Fiends doing this exact thing.
So, and I suspect the answer is the ship has already sailed on that, right? So I still would level the same criticism at the Thunderers. They shouldn't have waited that long. They should have announced it earlier. They should have said this change is coming. I've said that before. I'll stand by that. That's where they screwed up. Making the change wasn't wrong. Making the change was probably the right thing to do. Not announcing it sooner and explaining this was probably the wrong thing. Right. But this kind of communication is tough. So that was kind of the story with the Thunderers. Fine. I suspect, like I said, with the older scrolls, it's just like they are what they are. That ship has sailed. They've been there for years. They probably don't feel like moving them at this point is appropriate. Fine, whatever. I don't really care either way. I didn't.
Sure.
You know. They were very clear that their intention was never, ever to make people buy like a bunch of kits to build these units out. That is the opposite of what they want. They were very clear about that. And I believe them. Like, it's not that they don't
brought it up when we first saw the War Scrolls.
Sure. And by the way, it's not that they don't want to sell product. It's that that's not the way they want to sell product. Right. They would love to sell product because you want to buy the models because you think they're cool, not because you need to buy a bunch of extra kits to get one weapon off a sprue. They're very aware that doesn't lead to a long-term positive customer experience. They're not dummies. So anyways, as to the other changes, the FAQ stuff, the interesting conversation that happened there was a editing error and a pretty big one. And here's how it happened. They had a file, and their original file for the KO book contained like the damage values of D3, all but like 2 of these changes. There were 2 that were actually like power corrections, like the dispel item thing or whatever, right? Like that obviously wasn't an editing error, but all the rest of these where it was like numeric changes or something like that.
Instead of moving from like a 3 damage to a D3 damage.
Yeah, being the easy example.
Yes.
In the manuscript that was done pre going to the editor for final copy, it all says D3. And there was a mistake in editing and it went out like that. Now,
they actually have the file
right
for all those for that stuff that all said D3 in the office. Like that is, but when the file went to the editor or went to print, they sent the wrong file to print.
Correct. Yep. That's and look, that's a big screw up. It is.
Yeah.
Again, no, it wasn't like none of them sat there and tried to make excuses. I want to be very clear about that. Okay. Yeah. They explained it. They didn't try to say like, oh, well, you know, these things happen and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. They were like, nope, it was a mistake. It happened. We don't want that stuff to happen. But sometimes it does. And look, you can, like, people watching this, here's what I'll say. You can choose to believe them or not. I don't care. Like, you can make your own truth in the world. But what I will say is, one, that I completely believe them. And it makes sense to me as an error. And I certainly believe that could happen. I know that because I manage lots of people and make products for a living. And as I've mentioned before, you know, I have probably 30 people who make products for me, and all 30 of those people really want to make the best stuff possible. None of them ever intentionally screw stuff up. Yeah. Everybody's trying very hard. We have processes in place to make sure things get properly QA'd and these mistakes like this don't happen. We have layers of processes to make sure this doesn't happen, and oversight and review. And you know what? Sometimes it still happens. And sometimes those errors are pretty big, because in very large companies with lots of people touching something, things sometimes happen like this. Yeah. It sucks. There is no excusing it. That's when I have to eat this kind of crap, because my teams had this happen and it rolls up to me. The buck stops with me. And the only answer is it was a mistake. We're going to get to the bottom of it. And he was very open about the fact that they did do RCA and they are trying to put additional processes in place to make sure this doesn't happen in the future. So good.
Awesome. Like, I can't ask for any more. Like, that's a terrible, like, it makes sense because all of those values that were 3 you moved to D3. Like, so it's not like it didn't have the hallmarks or the fingerprints of like power adjustments, right? On those, like, it was a systemic thing across all of them. So I mean, I am convinced with an explanation like that. That's not what happened with the Thunderers, but yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Right. So we just had a bad confluence of circumstances. And again, you can choose to believe this explanation if you're not. Meeting them, sitting there, talking to them face to face, I believe this happened because I've sat in their shoes and I know how much it sucks to have to give this explanation. So, yeah, I mean, that's the reality. I've sat there with, by the way, a lot bigger dollar value mistakes than probably what we're talking about here. Okay. Yeah. So there we go. Okay. At any rate.
Well, and at the end of the day, this doesn't cost them anything.
Sure. Like, I mean for internally and for my clients, by the by. Okay.
Right. But I'm saying, like, GW, ultimately, this doesn't cost them anything because they updated it with the PDF and they're not going to lose sales. I mean, you know, one of the other statistics was like the rounding error. You know, like, so talk about, like, was it in the design scenario that they talked about sales? Like, hit that myth, because that's a great piece of data.
Sure. So this was an interesting discussion. So during the design seminar, the discussion came up of, you know, how much do rules affect sales? Like the idea that they would purposely leave the Thunderers broken to sell more kits or something like that.
Yep. Which I have not ever suggested.
No, I understand. But I mean, I have seen that suggested. I'm not saying you did. That is a thing that has floated out there in the aether. I'm not going to, whatever. Sure. Assumingly from no one. It just floats. It's just a piece of information that existed. They were pretty straightforward about that. They asked, like, do you have sales data? And their answer was yes. We get very granular sales data on everything that sells and where and how many and all that stuff. Yeah. Which I figured. I mean, you would have to expect they do. Yep. And then the question was, well, how much do you see rules affect sales? And the answer was not much. The direct question posed was, like, do you see power adjustments up or down affect sales positively or negatively? Yep. All right. In other words, a simple example would be you lower the points on something and it becomes more efficient. Do you see sales spike, or vice versa? And their answer was no. Yep. Like, I'm not going to say, he said, I'm not going to say I've never seen a blip, but it's always the most I've ever seen is something extremely minimal. Because the reality is that the hardcore players that chase that type of stuff probably aren't a big enough population to move the number. And you know, Andy said it like this. He said, look, there's what, 2,000 gamers here at Nova. Let's say everybody here at Nova is 2,000 plus. It was over 2,000. This is the biggest Nova ever, and it was great.
Yep.
And by the way, shout out to the Nova organizers. I know this is a total tangent, but I don't want to forget this. Shout out to everybody who organized Nova, who put together a Hurricane Harvey relief effort in the middle of it, as well as their normal charitable contributions. I believe something near $60,000 was raised for charity over Nova. That is amazing. And so to all the community who contributed, to the organizers, that's just beyond incredible. And it's why that event is so unique and special. And I would highly recommend getting there. Okay. Now back to this thing. So by the way, that's 2,000-ish people at Nova. He said, assume everybody in here is actually
playing AOS.
Was playing AOS or whatever, and is a purchaser of Warhammer, which isn't true, by the way. Like there were plenty of people there for Star Wars or whatever. He said, the website last week got 2 million unique hits.
Yep.
That doesn't mean everybody that bought that, everybody that went there bought something. But that's the point, right? Like some of those people did. And, when you're dealing with numbers like that, it's just like the models sell.
Yeah, like how many like hyper hardcore competitive folks are there out there? 200 worldwide that are actually dropping like big money? Maybe 500? Let's say 1,000.
Sure.
I mean, you're talking 2 million unique hits. What do you say, last month?
Last week.
Last week. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, again, how many of those people were hitting just for like FAQs or whatever? Sure. Probably plenty, right? A ton. Right. Maybe the majority, the vast majority. And it would still crush the other number, right?
Right.
Like if it was 90%, it would still be an order of magnitude higher.
Right.
For the website, right? 2, as a matter of fact. So anyway, the point is that like, what they've seen is that making a cool, their experience is pretty rock solid. When they make a cool army that grabs people aesthetically and has rules that people feel like feed into the army, that there's a verisimilitude to it, that army sells, right? Like it's the difference between playable and hyper competitive.
Yeah.
Doesn't amount to anything tangible in sales. Again, you can choose to believe this or not. I'm going to report what was told. Okay.
Sure.
I would tend to believe it just based on raw numbers. I've seen the numbers of gamers and people who are out there just watching videos and aspirational gamers who collect whole armies and paint and play 2 or 3 games a year if they're lucky.
Sure.
And, those people go out and buy a bunch of new product. Whereas, like, sure, how much do hyper competitive people often rely on secondhand? A lot. Not everybody. Some people do go buy whole new armies or something like that. That's fine. But again, it's just not enough to move the needle.
Yeah, that's true.
So there you go. That was another
super fascinating. Yeah, like so what other stuff from Nova then?
So there was just a lot of good. The games were obviously pretty great.
Yep.
Tournament wise, like related to what we're talking about today, not very relevant as they were still on GHB 2016. But the games were really good. Once both the narrative event and the match play event, which this year again there were both, were great. The people were up like the first night that the narrative event was running. The game was supposed to end at like midnight. I think they were up till like 2:30.
Wow.
Okay, just because everybody was so into it, that they like nobody wanted to stop playing. There was also, they were using a lot of like triumph and treachery stuff, and it was awesome. The match play stuff was great. Again, everything looked smooth. Everybody was having a good time. Lots of fun all around. There were some interesting armies placed, even in GHB 2016 terms. There were some interesting armies being played and certainly having fun. Overall, the 40K haul was, of course, ridiculous. I could only stay in there for a few minutes. Because there were too many people. It is massive. So, like it's just the press of humanity on you when you're in there. But it was great. Got to hang out with Chuck Moore, a whole bunch. Chuck's a good dude. And so he was playing in the tournament.
Nice.
So that was great. Overall, it was a really, really, really fantastic weekend. Lots of good insights into Shadespire, into GHB. You know, the designers were very frank that like what some of the most fun they've had in a while was writing the allegiance abilities, and stuff like that, that they really enjoyed that. It's fun to try to craft that. Here's a couple interesting points of discussion.
Yeah, please.
That came out of the GHB seminar. Some of the items that
have we lost Vince? Oh, GW Assassin's got him.
I'm back. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, okay.
Weird. I don't know what happened there. It just randomly muted. That's fun. Anywho, with some of the armies that they haven't seen yet, the reason you haven't seen them is because they are not sure exactly how they want to capture them or portray them, because the modelers haven't really been able to accurately get a thumb on what the army is going to be. And the example of that was humans. Okay. So humans, as they were discussing, are very tricky in the mortal realms because they don't know how they want to tackle humans. They don't just want to remake the Empire, just make more pantalooned dudes. They have no problem with those existing out. Like they were like, that's perfectly fine. And it represents the sort of preserved culture of Azerheim. But what humans are throughout the realms or whatever could be a very different thing.
Sure.
And I asked him, have they thought about gold cards? Gold cards in Magic are like cards that are multiple colors, right? So you've got a card that takes white and red mana. It's a gold card. Okay, great. So, you know, in other words, have they thought about gold cards for armies or units where they would have perhaps multiple factions? Is that design space they're thinking about exploring? And they said, yes, very certainly. We have thought about that. The idea that you could have a unit or even an entire faction that could sit across multiple alliances. Could be both, for example, order and death. And as an example, he said, and he was very clear. He said, don't read anything into this. Okay, yeah. This isn't what's happening. But I will give you an easy example. If you think about humans in the mortal realms, humans could straddle basically every grand alliance, right?
Yep.
They can fall to chaos. They could be death worshippers and necromancers and things like that. And they could certainly be rampaging barbarians obsessed with destruction, as well as the people who live in cities trying to preserve order. And he's like, now I'm not saying that suddenly you're going to see humans that are deployable in all of those things. Be very, very clear. That is not what he's saying. But the point being is that humans could occupy any of those roles. And that's part of the challenge of designing them. So, you know, take that for what you will. You know, Pete's big message was that he thinks the next 2 years, because obviously they've seen a lot of sculpts for things that are sort of in the pipe out for the next year, 2 years. Sure. He thinks they are going to be even more exciting than anything we've seen thus far.
Yeah, because you had asked him, like, I think one of the questions you had asked was like, what's the most exciting, like, art or something like that? You know, what's your favorite art piece? Or somebody had asked him that. You told me, and he was like, I can't tell you that.
Correct. Yes, I said, what's your favorite art piece that you've ever seen come from the artist? Because obviously the sculptors work a lot off of art that's done by the art team, and not always, but it's a source of inspiration. And he said, I can't actually share with you my favorite piece I've seen, and which is amazing to think about. In the history of every piece of art that he's seen from GW, something new moved him that much. So there you go. Obviously there was a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of just taking it on sort of belief right now, or faith right now, whatever you want to say. Because, we haven't seen all of it yet, but it was clear that they were all very excited about what they've seen and what they know is coming. Yeah. And more importantly, it was also clear to me that though 40K is a huge focus right now, and rightly so, because they just, launched their new edition, that we're going to see a lot of attention being given to AOS over the next, especially in 2018.
Which is awesome. Like, that's a great feeling, just to know that, like, we're going to have another big year.
Yes, absolutely. We already know that probably we're going to start the year with Death Rattle. That was the thing that was mentioned on Wednesday night.
Like, unless you're saying that they confirmed that it was going to be Death Rattle specifically.
The question that was asked was about Death Rattle, and the response was the other side of Christmas, more or less, pretty directly to that question. Yes.
Oh, so
we know there is
coming.
And by the way, the malign portents thing is going to be big. Like that, what I mean by that is it's not just like the army release or the faction release or whatever. It's going to be a whole event and a lot of.
So you're saying like expect campaign book and then like associated like factions, like as part of these narrative moves.
Yeah, exactly. Malign portents is not. It's going to represent like a lot of release of background stuff, and there's going to be organized play elements to it, like the previous campaign.
Yeah.
And so rules, releases, organized play, the whole deal. Like it is a full court press. They were very clear about that. Like it will be sort of like welcome back to big time AOS. We got through we got a lot of big codexes out for 40K. Let's drop some hot AOS action come the beginning of the year. So there you go. And Shadespire will already be out and running and off to the races at that point. So they also said that Shadespire will run in seasons.
Yep.
Okay. So like the first season, the first cycle
is 20.
Well, yeah, it's basically like 2017 to time to be determined. He didn't say what the end was, but that like the units would all get bespoke war scrolls to use them as named characters in AOS, and we'd see more faction releases and more cards and stuff like that. And then that season will come to a close, and then they'll launch a new Shadespire season, which you'll see totally new items, which could even be, by the way, a different place than Shadespire, because it is Warhammer Underworlds, Shadespire, the Reckoning. No, I mean, you get what I'm saying, right? Like it could be somewhere else. So there you go.
Which is awesome. Like to think about like the Garden of Nurgle could be one of those or whatever.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Pretty sweet.
I think that's probably most of the big Nova news. I mean, it was awesome. There was
a painting competition, wasn't there? You're not going to get out of this.
Yes.
Nice try, Dick.
Yes, there was a painting competition.
How did you do, Vince?
It was better than I could have hoped. It was pretty amazing. A big thank you to everybody who was involved with it, to all the judges who did amazing. So I ended up.
What is unique about this painting competition? Like, let's open with that.
Sure.
Like,
so Nova.
What's different about this competition versus other ones?
Sure. So Nova is an open system painting competition. Open system means effectively like you're judged against a standard, and where you score is you keep what you kill. You don't directly compete with anybody else except for the podiums. As to say, there's a best in each category. And only one person can get that, and you are in direct competition there. You have to get gold in the category to get the first, basically.
But when you say like you keep what you kill and you're not competing, like if no one did a good enough paint job, then no one gets gold. That's what you're saying. You could have bronze and silvers, but no one gets gold because everybody sucked.
That is correct. As what happened last year, by the by, in like 2 different categories.
Oh wow.
This year it did not. This year the entries were amazing. By the way, this was the biggest year ever for entries. There were 90.
Wow.
There were 96 submissions in single figure alone.
Wow.
Okay. Like, in other words, one of the categories was single figure. It had 96 submissions in it.
And where would we go to view those? Kieran asks.
Where can you see everything? They took photos of everything. I suspect they're all going to go up on the Nova either site or Nova Facebook. I'll hunt around and figure out where all the photos are, because I know they had photos of everything they were going to put up. So I'll figure that out, and I'll put a link down below.
Awesome. Thanks.
96. So, yeah. Was it what I say?
90 something.
I thought I said 96. I don't know. Whatever. Okay. So 96 in single figure. It was a big competition, and the judging here is very hard, by the way. The judges are they have a very strong eye. So to take any medal in this competition is difficult. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the quality level this year was mind-blowing.
Like Crystal Rush quality?
Yes. Yes. I'll just say yes, because I don't want to get in the nuance of European painters versus American painters. I'll say yes. There was absolutely stunning entries there all the way around. Okay.
Okay.
And so overall, when it comes to, you asked how I did. Yeah. So I walked away with, I had 10 entries, and they ended up sort of condensing your entries if they were in a single thing. They kind of like, if you had multiple, because you're allowed to enter multiple in a single category. So if you had multiple in a single category, they kind of condensed them into groupings of quality, and then they picked the best one and then awarded that. But you could still get multiple medals. It would just, you would need to have things that were significantly different quality.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So out of the 10 entries, I walked with 7 medals, which was 3 bronze, 2 silver, and 2 gold. The 2 gold being for the Lord of Change in single figure. I was very happy. I was very, 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 very proud. Out of the 96 entries in single figure, there were 4 gold medals shared by 3 people.
Wow.
Okay. So to have one of them I'm incredibly honored. I mean, let me just say that. So yeah, 3 bronze, 2 silver, 2 gold. And then I walked with the podium for the best in show for vehicle, which was for Veritas, who's up there, my girl, my Imperial Knight. And which, if you're keeping score, yes, she's won best in vehicle now at 2 competitions in a row.
Right.
And I walked with fan favorite, which was really unbelievable. I didn't know that. I took the picture and like tweeted that out, and they didn't have the fan favorite tallied yet. Yeah. So it wasn't until the later show, like the final award ceremony. Nova does all the things, all the award ceremony announcements, like every tournament at one big award ceremony at the end of the show. It wasn't until then that they announced it, and like my heart leapt out of my body. Like, it was amazing. So I mean, that's beyond an honor, because you can't control that, right? Like, that's just, people have to love your stuff. There's nothing you can do about that. That is just
right.
pure...
That's not about quality. Like, it is about quality, but it's also about like how well it resonates with the people who are at the show.
Sure.
So that's a huge, yeah.
I was beyond honored to have that win. So I don't, like, to everybody who voted for me or anything for me, thank you. To everybody who voted for anybody, thank you. It was awesome to see so much fan participation in that. Best in show. Actually, before I talk about best in show, let me talk about something else first. Yeah. So I want to give a shout out to Matt DiPietro. Sorry, I'm pronouncing his name wrong, like a bad person. Matt was there. He won. He pulled a fair amount of gold himself, but he had won best bust and best in category for his Ice Fisherman of Titan, nice. which was at Crystal Brush, and he'd taken first in that category there as well. And it's one of the most beautiful busts I've ever seen. It's amazing. I cannot recommend it. If you're at all interested in painting busts, you need to look at this. It is a masterpiece. I spent probably a good hour just staring at it in the cabinet, up close, because it's beyond skilled. So, check out Matt's work. It's Contrast Miniatures, and it's just beautiful. So anyway, I wanted to say that and congratulate Matt, who also had some big wins. Shout out to John Margiata, Blood is a Medium, who cleaned up like crazy and won best weathering for his amazing entries, his amazing unit entries. And then, so now best in show was the person who took best in single figure and then took best in show, which was Damon Drescher. I hadn't really got to talk to Damon before I got to talk to him at this show. And his work was awesome. He had this absolutely gorgeous Terminator. It was just a Terminator. Like, it's a normal size 28 mil Terminator, and it was a freaking masterpiece. So, I felt when I was talking to Matt and we were looking at the case, and he said, that's the one to beat. It's the best thing in here. And it won best in show. And I loved it from the first time I saw it. So I like it couldn't have went to a more deserved person. I always love it when I see who wins Best in Show and I go, yep. Like I would have chosen that over anything I had. So there you go. I felt good about that. Nice. There you
go. So lots obviously going on in Nova. Caleb Walters walked away with number 1 for the tournament. Congratulations, Caleb. I think he's in our chat still. With the list that won Adepticon. So, but that was, again, as Vince said, the 2016. So we're moving on to the GHB 2017. Blackout was also this weekend. And we had some strong showings at Blackout. We'll talk about this a little bit later in the show, but some of the initial fallout seemed to fall along lines somewhat of what I had anticipated. We saw strong Tzeentch Demons showing. We saw a Murder Host strong showing. That was actually interestingly running Chaos, like Allegiance abilities, but all the Khorne Allegiance. But a Murder Host, we saw Fire Slayers up there with a fairly unorthodox list. He was running like a father and a Mag Father and 2 Mag Sons, which okay, sure. Okay. And then a bunch of Volkites and a big Hearth Berserker block and just a lot of the stuff that you'd anticipate to see. And then I think there was maybe a Death Allegiance that was up there that placed real high. So I mean, there was a nice assortment of forces at the top. So that's pretty exciting. And yeah, like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit more. Blackout also brought about the controversy. They were using the new scenarios. And I think there were 2 Murder Hosts, and both of them won basically on first turn of their not Duality of Death. I'm blanking on the scenario. On Scorched Earth, where you can destroy objectives, because they just pushed all their bloodletters up and blew up all the objectives like turn 1. And so that brought about a whole big conversation on TGA and on Twitter, and so that was exciting. It'll be fun to see how that develops and how TOs respond to that. Yeah, so some interesting stuff on the tournament scene, kind of the first blood of GHB 2017.
Yeah, and we're going to deep dive into that, later on as we talk about some of these lists and kind of our, thoughts on it, and we'll talk about Scorched Earth and your Twitter rant and what it inspired. So, I look forward to that.
Which Twitter rant?
Your Twitter call out. How about that? You happy about that thing? You're calling Murder Host as a tier 0 list.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you like any list you can win turn 1, like that tends to warp the meta.
Well, we'll see. I have thoughts on this as well. But anyways,
sure.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
All right. What else we got?
I don't know. Do we have anything else? Citadel painting app.
Yes,
yeah. So painting app. It's coming 9/16 in all of its glory. And on top of that, if you download it before the 22nd, I think, the 23rd, they are going to give away like 4 or 5 free entire paint sets. So that's pretty awesome. So download the app when it drops, and you might walk away with a huge set of GW paints.
Yeah, and let me reiterate what they said.
As if Vince needs more paint.
I'm totally going to I was going to download it anyways, but now, yeah, I'll take a bunch of GW paints for free, sure. I wouldn't pay for them, but I'll take them for free. I'll just have to transfer them all to dropper bottles. But anyways, so
$200 on dropper bottles.
Sure. I want to reiterate what was said about the paint app at Nova, which was obviously we're talking full-fledged thing here. It'll have model guides and all that kind of stuff. You'll be able to look at the model, be able to see all the paints, blah, 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 blah.
Yep.
But as well, the important thing I want to reiterate is it is free initially, and they committed that it will always be free. So there you go. And yes, as was pointed out, it's not the entire paint set. It's like all the base layer and something. I don't know. It's not like the giant $500 thing. It's like
that's really disappointing.
It's like the 100 and some paint set thing, the middle one. That's the big one.
Well, that's less stellar.
Oh my God. They're giving you a bunch of free paint, and you're going to complain about it.
They're giving 5 people free paint. Not me. 5
You could be one of them, Tom.
Yeah.
If they draw your name, they're throwing it back. I'm just saying that's what's going to happen there. That's probably the community team that draws the names. So they're going to be like, they're going to see that. They're going to be like, Tom Lyons. Nope.
Yep. And
get this out of here.
Yep. And Eddie will pull it and be like, yeah, probably not. This was a trial one. Let's try this for real next time.
Absolutely. That'll be a fake draw. Absolutely. Yeah. Test draw. All right. So let's see. What else have we got? What else, Tom? We had the General's Handbook FAQ.
Yep.
Which your Demons of Nurgle got their allies. Good on you.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was just an oversight, and I'm glad that they moved on that. I think that realistically, I think we'll have a book coming up in the coming weeks/months. So they probably were like, "Hey, what's it say in that PDF?"
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Sure.
Yes.
I like that we got the clarification on the mount thing as well. Clarifying it to command traits and magical artifacts can only be used to affect attacks made by the hero and have no effect on attacks made by their mount unless specifically stated otherwise.
Yes.
Which is
it doesn't work on your dog.
Yes.
No, it doesn't work on your dragon.
Right. So
your ghosts, Coven Throne, doesn't work on that either. Stop. It's just the vampire. Read the description. You can figure out who the hero is and then who is assisting that hero. Everybody else that's assisting the hero, not them. Right. That's what matters. Stop cheating. This means, unfortunately, Vince, that your Fate-sworn warband, your Lord on Demonic Mount, does not get Phantasmal Weapon, neg-2 rend on everything.
Yeah, I know. I can't give the horse doesn't get the neg-2 rend anymore.
Neg-1, what he's talking about is that Fate-sworn gave everything in the profile neg-1 rend, and then the Phantasmal Weapons said increase rend by 1. And so your beast, your mount would go to neg-2 rend on all.
Yeah, and notably fantastic. Most of the artifacts already had mount exceptions built into them. Right? It would say, this only affects the attacks of the blah, 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 or one weapon or something like that. Phantasmal Weapons was different, and then it didn't have that exception built in. It just said increase all the rend of all attacks by neg-1. It was pretty simple and straightforward. So yes, sadly, the Chaos Lord on Demonic Mount and the Fate-sworn just got a little less good because he doesn't have the neg-2 rend horsey kicks anymore, but he's still pretty good. As
my friends long reiterated to me, I'm going to say this mantra to all of you. Stop trying to cheat.
I happily played it as written. Okay. I'm allowed to do that sometimes too for my sweet Chaos Lord on Demonic Mount, but that's okay. I just that he lost that. I don't care. I'm that dude is still totally worth it. That's the sign of something that was slightly bent when you can have the power decrease and you're nope, still good. I'm fine.
Yeah, I saw that and I was I'd still take him. I'm still in. That dude is going to buff my knights as they charge across the table. That is happening.
Yep. Sure. So anyway, there you go. And also specifically, they did draw this line to command traits and magical artifacts.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. So there you go.
And then finally, Monster Week. We're doing a bunch of celebration of monsters, and so they have battle plans and traits and for legendary monsters and a bunch of sweet stuff. Man, kudos to the community team coming up with something like this because it's just a lot of fun. The only thing that would have made it more awesome, which let me just say, this is not, I'm not being critical here, but this is just a creative suggestion, is that it would have been neat if they would have revealed a new monster for pre-order the following week.
Oh yeah, that would have been cool.
So if they would have been Monster Week, yay, we're gonna celebrate this, and here's this big brother, or whatever. Sure. And done 5 monster reveals that then all go on pre-order the following week or something. That would have been neat. But you know what they're doing? I love it. It's a bunch of just free content that's interesting, that's compelling. And let me just say, for those of you that are not familiar with it, the Jabber Slythe is really good.
So good. Suicide Slythe, baby. Just let me tell you what, that Slythe meta is coming. You don't
as much as let me just say this. I'm gonna just jump in here.
Trip Slythe.
I'm not gonna keep this one to myself. Doom obviously pointed this out in one of his videos, and I'm just a bandwagoner onto his insight.
Whatever. I called this Scythe initially. I'm taking credit before Doom, but go ahead.
That's fine. For those of you who don't know, the Jabber Scythe is a 10 wound monster for 120 points. Okay? He's a Monsters of Chaos, which is basically allied with the entire arm. All of Chaos. No matter what allegiance you choose, you can get a Monster of Chaos. Okay? So you can get at the Jabber Scythe as your ally. And 3 of these bad boys, if you start within, 6 inches of one of these guys, you roll d6 for the unit that starts with the enemy unit that starts within 6 inches. On a 6, that unit does nothing until your next hero phase. Zero. No spells, nothing. No attacking, no charging, no fighting, no piling in. Nothing. No moving. These abilities are stackable. So 3 of these guys will shut down an entire battlefield. Because you roll 3 dice per every unit. And any 6 is rolled on any unit within 6 inches, enemy unit, and that unit stops acting for an entire turn.
Yep.
This is the definition of unfun, but right now it's stacked, so you're welcome. Go get 3 of them.
And by the way, like if the unit that doesn't get if the enemy doesn't have shooting and they're forced to go deal with the thing in melee, depending on what they send into it, it's just like they just have to choose to destroy a unit to kill this 120 point.
Because every time they take damage on a 4-up, they kick back a D3 mortal wounds.
Right, exactly. So like, boom. God forbid you put something that actually hits hard into them because they're just gonna like explode, baby, explode.
Yeah, like it is a great road bump for 120 points with a fly speed. Like, it's so good. It is.
Tell you, man, Jabber Scythe is back. In many ways, he never left.
Yeah,
but he's back now.
Yeah, you just so good. Just go camp him on a bunch of points. Come, take the point. Oh, so good.
It's solid. So there you go.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. So yes.
I know. Monster Week. That's my contribution to Monster Week. Go get yourself.
There you go.
Some fine cast Jabber Scythes.
Sure. Sounds good to me. All right. Let's see. And I think that's pretty much everything we had, right? That's all the news for this week. It's a big news week, obviously. So let's talk about some pick of the week, Tom. What do you want to share with everybody?
Sure. Man, there's so many good videos this week. I'm gonna pick Garage Hammer just did a 3-hour show on the GHB, and they walk through. They spent a lot of time on the various elements, including both the narrative play and the open play. And I mean, if you can get, it's good. Check it out.
All right, fair dinkum. I will give a shout out to, I mentioned Chuck earlier. So Chuck had put up a new blog post talking about Nova, and he's going to do a series on Nova and kind of his experiences. So if you want to deep dive on more elements from that, you can check out his blog. I'll throw the first one. He has the first article up there. So I'll link that down below. The first one, he's talking about the Capital Palette, which is the painting competition, which may or may not be interesting to you. But there'll be more talking about sort of the games and the tournaments and the convention itself and stuff like that. So there you go. I'll link to the blog, and you can pick and choose what you happen to like.
Sure.
All right. So let's talk about some hobby time. What have you been working on, Tom? Nobody can see that, Tom.
That. A bunch of
working on elvish buildings.
No, you can a little farther over. Anyways, a bunch of balloon dwarfs. My Kara Drong overlords. My raiders. Yep. So they're coming along.
Nice.
Enjoying them. They're fun to paint.
Getting your force ready for Holy Havoc.
Yep.
Sure. I need to do the same. Unfortunately, when I come back from a competition, like what I really want to do is just like do more competition painting. That doesn't really combine with army painting. So we'll see how that works out.
What did you come home to, Vince? How about you?
Sure. All right, it's fine.
We're doing this.
It's fine. This is what I came home to, Tom. There you go.
All the way.
There you go. That's what I've got. So I've got some stuff here to assemble and paint. I may have a little bit.
For those of you guys that don't know, Vince hates unpainted models.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
With a passion.
I do. I don't have any like unpainted armies sitting around or anything like that.
Yep. I have a box. One of my big orders that I've had kind of outstanding is finally arriving tomorrow. And I'm super stoked about that. I'm going to add to all of this.
Oh, sorry.
As if I need. See, I have some open shelf space over here.
You do, yeah. Well, you better fill that up immediately.
Yeah, next to my assembled KO. Need to fix that.
Nice. Yeah, and as like that, what I just held up isn't going to be everything for the final force, by the way. Just because there's only one Maw Crusher in there. And obviously, I've got to have two of those. Like, you've got to double Crusher, so I'm going to need a second.
Are you doubling or are you tripling?
I mean, well, let's start with two, okay? We'll go from there. But like, I should have more or less everything else I need covered. So, yeah.
20 brutes, that's probably enough.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, you know, what I've got total there is like 20 brutes, 25 or something Ard Boys, 2 casters, 2 war chanters, 2 mega bosses, the Maw Crusher, 2 giants, 12 piggy pigs. So I mean, it's pretty good. So,
Awesome.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I've already started, like, while I was waiting on them in the time I had. It's one of my hobby time things was, since I knew this stuff was coming, I actually started prepping the bases beforehand. Because I always do my bases separate.
Yeah.
So I actually
I'm having to do that for my force, and I hate it. I hate doing my bases separate.
No, I only do them separate.
Ugh.
I don't. The question was raised of how am I going to convert the double crushes? I have plans. I'll leave it at that.
Bok motherfuckers.
That's correct. So anyways, I'm going to do, obviously you're doing lava. And so, you know, I want these guys to be lava as well.
Yeah.
I'll go for that. So I was prepping up all my like lava bases for the brutes and stuff like that. So, I just got them primed earlier today. I made up a bunch. I just, you know, I kind of sat down and just made a ton of like bases for them and for some of the characters and stuff like that. So it was all base work, because the other thing I'm doing is preparing a display base for my next actual competition piece, which is this right here. And I'm just waiting on the resin that I need to come in so I can actually pour it. We've got to put some vegetation on here. I discovered a new method for algae.
Of course you did.
That I really like. So I'll probably do a video on that. I don't know if you can see that. Can you kind of see the green that's there? I don't know if that really comes through or not. But I discovered a new method for doing like clinging algae in water scenes. And I really actually like it quite a bit. So I'll probably do a video on that at some point. So there you go. Yeah, and my hobby time has been all basing for like the couple hours I've had. Like I just, you know, I've only had a few hours here and there in between literally like flights and stuff over the past week and a half. So it's just been working on simple stuff I know I can get done and need to do. So there you go. And soon, so I'll probably finish this girl. We're gonna do a little fun project here of a fat frog. Nice. I got this fat frog to do.
Got to do a Lizardman army events?
No, this is I'm doing this for someone else. And so we'll work on the fat frog a little, and then it's going to be straight into the jaws, into Du Bois. I've got a couple big competition projects planned, but those will be for far in the future. So we're gonna get through them jaws, and then these guys I'm gonna try to take them up to a pretty high level. Let me just say that. So
the iron jaws.
Yeah, nice. I've got big plans for them. We'll see how those plans shake out.
Well, if I
commit suicide,
let's say if it works, maybe we'll take them as the team to not only Holy Havoc but also Adepticon. Unlikely, because I don't think they're going to work well together.
It's fine, whatever. One other quick note on hobby-related stuff is people have asked me about teaching classes. So I'm trying to get it set up right now to teach some classes at sort of 3 big conventions next year at Adepticon, Gen Con, and Nova. So if people are interested, I'll give you more details once that comes up. I'm talking to the people who are behind all of that right now and trying to put together, you know, class schedules and figuring out if it'll work and what I want to teach and stuff like that. So it'll be bringing hobby cheating into, I don't know, reality, I guess, into the real world. And they'll be based on a lot of the videos and things like that. So there you go. So if you're interested, I'll like I said, I'll have more details then, and I would love it if those classes were full once I eventually teach them so that they invite me back again. But there you go. Okay.
Vince,
yes.
I'm not going to take your class.
I'm sure you're not, Tom. I'm sure you're not. That's all right. But let's shall we turn to our topic du jour, Tom?
Sure.
A quick shout out to Velotron, who said he needs a class on how to convince his wife to let him go to a convention. My answer would be,
I mean, I got a lot of practice at it.
Sure. You want to talk to Tom, reach out to him offline. He can help you out with that. It has to do a lot with negotiations and deal making. You got to figure out what you're ready to give up.
It's true. Yes. And you, no, yeah. Yes. I'm not going to go into that, but yes, it's about finding what people care about and putting pressure on that.
Sure. Absolutely. read The Art of the Deal. I don't know what to tell you. I can't help you out. All right. So let's talk about the new meta. So obviously we had Blackout, and that was using the new rules.
Yep.
And so with the sort of feature segment of this is going to be Tom and I swinging wildly based on an extremely small sample set.
Yeah, this is like tinfoil hatting at its best.
Yes. So let's be very clear about this right up front. Everything we say here is guessing at best and could easily turn out to be incredibly wrong.
Completely, utterly wrong.
This is the loosest of inductive reasoning at its finest, okay? And the turkey is right about its life and how wonderful it is every day but one day, and we're a lot less sure than that. So the point is that take all this with a very large grain of salt. Get out a salt lick and start chiseling, because that's how much salt you're going to need. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about it and what we see. So Blackout, Tom, shall we start with the murder host thing?
No, well, so maybe.
Okay.
So I want to talk about what it takes to succeed at the competitive scene.
Okay, so you want to step up a level first. Okay.
Yeah, I want to step up a level before we get, because when we talk about armies, it's good to be able to talk about the categories.
Okay, sure. So let's do that. Let's level set first. I'm down with that.
Yeah, and what I would say is, and I've talked about this before, I need to do a video about it at some point, but in general, you have a handful of factors that really determine whether an army has the ability to compete at the highest levels. Okay. Mm-hmm. And what I would say they need is they need killing power. That's kind of important. And in that category, you have something like the ability to do mortal wounds, the ability to project power. So to put power on the battlefield where you need power. So killing power, I would say mobility.
Yeah. And by the way, just to put a pin on that, like on power projection, imagine a unit where everybody in the unit's like neg 4 rend and does 3 damage a hit, and they're relatively cheap, but they have like a 6-up armor save and a move of 1 inch.
Yeah.
And no special deployment rules.
Yep.
like that's an extremely powerful offensive unit that is completely worthless, right? I'm purposely picking a straw man just to set up the example, right? Because that unit can't project its power. It's going to just be able to be dealt with, walked away from, killed, whatever that, like there are multiple answers to it that can all be taken. So regardless of the fact that its numbers, like that offensive line numbers are crazy and they would shred something if they touched it. Yeah, it's a very hard unit to actually make worth anything because they can't project their power anywhere in a reliable way.
Because they're moving 1 inch around, you know, like let's say they can't run, they're moving like 1 inch around.
Sure.
They, like
make it even worse. They can't run.
Right. Everybody else will pick their fights against it. That's the key. And so the reality is that you need to be able to project power where power is needed. This is why Sail was so powerful. Is because Sail had the ability to put any unit where it needed to be at that moment. This is why, for example, Hell Cannons were so strong. Was that because it could drop 2d6 mortal wounds on the head of anything on the table, even if it was in cover. This is why, you know, and I could go on for why Lightning Chariot's really good.
Sure.
Why Sail is still really good. You know, Sail's a much more limited application, but he's still a really good model.
Snowball throwing, like sometimes power, exactly, like the ability to project power could be captured through a ranged ability like snowball throwing or a cut and ruck shots or whatever, or it could be through mobility, whether that be teleportation or just being able to be real fast or whatever.
Well,
right?
and so that's the next thing. So mobility is a big part of this. So power, like killing power. Another is mobility. So mobility is a key element of this. So being able to put units where you need them, when you need them. So this is, on one hand, it's the Stormcast is like lightning strike, like the airdrops for Stormcast. But if you'll remember, like this is like when they got toned back is when they got moved. Stormcast got moved from being able to drop when they wanted to, where they wanted to a random dice roll and on a 3+. Like that move was a huge like power tweak, and a lot of people I don't think understand that. That's just why I think like what is it, Hammer Strike Brotherhood can still do it at will. That's why those things are so powerful, is because you get to choose when and where you're dropping.
I mean, Hammer Strike, it isn't still it isn't at will. Like you can basically get them in there if you've got a prosecutor to lay your the hammer bros up into the pocket, as it were.
Yeah. This is why I would argue. This is why Vanguard Wing, which is I've espoused from very earlier on. Russ Veal during Order Week also spoke very highly of Vanguard Wing because it can pick up your block of Liberators and put them anywhere else on the board. Near Prosecutor Wing or Prosecutors, but the reality is that right now there's no rules that you can't stretch them out. This is why Change Host was so strong. It is still very strong. It's just you can't string them out, as Relian pointed out on Twitter the other day. It's been like in the errata, Change Host was adjusted so that you like when you swap models, everything has to be deployed within 9 inches of the model swap. So they can no longer like conga line across the table. So sorry, Joe. I know you won an event doing that. You know, but anyway, so mobility is an important thing. This is one reason why Skyfires were so powerful, was that you were able to do two things. You're both able to both project power from shooting, and they were highly mobile. So they were where they needed to be for the line of sight when they needed to be there. Right. And then, so as part of that, the third piece is reliability. Okay. And in reliability, I lump things like durability.
Sure, defense, the ability to the ability to actually withstand stuff, so you can reliably know they'll be where they need to be where they need to be, stay where they need to stay.
Right. So, is the unit reliable? This has to do with defenses. Like when I would move my Chaos Warrior block up, I knew nothing in the game could remove it when it had its full buffs up. Like I knew that like all the best offenses in the world, I'd run the math. All the best offenses in the world with the best rolls could only get it off the table in 2 turns of full combat. Just because of all the die rolls and everything else that was there, because of the amount of wounds and all that stuff. And so they were hyper reliable. When I put them somewhere, they were going to stick. They weren't moving. They weren't going anywhere. So reliability is a big deal. Another aspect, so in addition to durability and reliability, something like this is why the Zinch dice are so powerful, is that it removes the element of randomness when you need there not to be randomness. When you need that 6, they just pull it from their dice.
Right.
So
sure.
they remove that randomness. By removing randomness, you increase reliability. And so this is why, like, Skaven, inevitably, the Skyer stuff can be good and bad. It can spike to very high damage, but in general, they're notoriously unreliable.
Sure. You could accidentally kill your own stuff pretty easily.
Right.
Sure.
So this is why, for example, with the Slann teleport, it's fairly reliable. 5 out of 6, you're going to drop them where you need. On a 1 out of 6, you're not. And so as far as like lightning strikes go, like if you're teleporting units around, that's fairly reliable. If you put Croak into that equation, Croak gives you 3 dice that you can, like, 3 rerolls on anything. Lord Croak turns that teleport into a hyper reliable teleport, because now he can reroll that dice if you ever drop the 1.
Right.
So
and I mean, as somebody like Tyler Emerson will tell you that he has duffed the Woods move, like sometime when he really didn't want to. And that unit still moves. It just ends up sitting there doing nothing and put in a bad position. Which one is worse depends on the exact situation. But obviously there could be a critical time where, like, you need to move unit A from here to here, and if you don't, you lose the game, and that can be the time you roll the 1.
Yep.
Right? And it's like, is that going to happen every time? No, that's what we mean. It's fairly reliable, right? So, yeah.
So projection of power. So we have projection of power, we have mobility, we have reliability. Reliability, durability obviously fits into that reliability, so your defenses. So the fourth one, I would argue, is what we're seeing now, which is bodies. I think the new element that's going to get added to this is that there are some scenarios where just having bodies is going to matter.
Where quantity has its own quality, as it were.
It will, yeah. Just because, and previously in the old world, there was also this. Let me point that out. Anybody that's played Gift of the Heavens, when that thing drops, body blocking enemies outside of that zone of 6 inches, or that, the 3-inch, 6-inch diameter, that's really important, because if they get within range, they shut off your ability to gain points. So having a body block on that scenario was always very important, making sure that they couldn't get into your zone around your meteor. And other scenarios are like this. If you can move up, like this is what my Chaos Warriors did when I would string them across the table, is that because I had just the raw amount of bodies, I could body block, I could section off entire portions of the battlefield. And so it was less important previously. It will become more important now. And this is no more obvious, in my opinion, than in the new world of Scorched Earth, where there are 6 objectives, 3 to defend, 3 to attack.
Well, and it also, so real quick before we get into the specifics of Scorched Earth.
Yeah.
This has knock-on consequences, right? This has 2nd and 3rd order consequences.
Yep.
Because other things that may be of seemingly less value suddenly might have more value in certain situations like this where it's required. Paul Conti made a video the other day talking about freaking free people archers or whatever they are, right?
Sure,
like the dumb archers.
They're free move,
yeah, who, like, exactly at the beginning of the game, sort of pre everything, get basically what we would have thought of as a Vanguard move back in the day. Right?
Yeah. Shadow Warriors get this, those guys get it, Night Runners get it, a number of units get it.
Right. And like the archers are relatively cheap, they're throwaway, they're a garbage unit, but with like 2 of them, they get to pre-move and they can like block off a section of the board pretty, again, strung out, 10 archers put out, like they can really cover a big section of the board and prevent things like drops from, because there's a bunch of armies that have teleports now.
Zone out. They can zone out part of the battlefield.
Right, because most of those drops have the nice standard 9-inch restrictions, so they can zone out parts of the battlefield. They can be there so that, like, if you do have things that are charging towards your points or something in the first turn, it becomes a roadblock in the way. You could even have sort of strings of multiples of them, right? That these are cheap enough that they could literally be sat out there in sort of multiple sort of chaff blocking road bombs. So
yeah, don't get me wrong. I looked at 30 Shadow Warriors.
sure.
That was in the cards where I was like,
Yeah, so like my point is just, and I'm not saying Empire archers are necessarily suddenly,
Yeah.
or Free People archers, whatever the heck they're called, are suddenly like the new hotness. Though I do have like 10 Lumpen Kroops painted archers ready to go to ever stand in should I need these guys. Because Lumpen Kroops forever, halfling power. But and they're just as much Free People as anything else. You shut up. So but you know, my point is that like things like that the meta reacts, right? When certain things become good and there become certain strategies, other units' values get increased in ways you would not have previously projected. So okay. Now continue.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so those are all of those elements. And so those, by the way, those units are examples of mobility, like the value of mobility because of that free movement. They can be somewhere before the game starts, before anybody else gets to do anything. That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. So. Okay. So given all of that, would you like to talk now about Blackout and some of the top results? So now do we want to start with the Murder Host thing?
Sure. Let's talk Murder Host. Yeah.
All right. So what is the Murder Host, Tom? Do you want to explain the Murder Host?
So the Murder Host is a Khorne Demons
battalion.
Oh, yeah. So by the way, there is a fifth element that I forgot. I'm sorry about this. And I guess it falls into reliability. But there's another factor of this, and one other aspect of these very like top tier armies. So oftentimes top tier armies are going to have multiple ones of these. Like they're often going to have 3 of the 4, and they're going to do 3 of the 4 very well. Really good armies are going to do all 4 of them to some degree or to some caliber. So one aspect of that reliability, by the way, is low drop numbers.
Oh sure. Okay.
Because what that does is that says I only have 3 drops, so I will reliably against many opponents take first turn or make them take first turn.
Right. I'll be able to choose, which is the
I'll be able to choose what's the most advantageous, and so low drop numbers falls into the reliability. Okay, now jumping back to the Murder Host. The advantage of the Murder Host is that it is a Demons battalion that has up to 9 units in it, and it's okay price. It's not super affordable, but it's not like a plague touched warband. But it's basically a bloodletter hero and 8 additional units of 8 or 7, 8 of a number of different types of demons, including bloodletters, blood crushers, the skull cannon, and the Khorne dogs. So flesh hounds.
Khorne dogs.
Khorne dogs. And what it does is that so you can drop like a whole shit ton of stuff in one drop. And so even if you're adding additional things to this list, you're much lower on the drop rate because all of your battle line can fit in here. This then combines with the fact that bloodletters buying a block of 30 bloodletters is only 270 points now, which that's a really good deal considering they went up if you're buying by 10s, they went up 10 points, but if you buy in blocks of 30, they've collectively went down like 50 points. I know 60 points. Yeah.
You get a
30 from what they were.
Correct. You get a savings of 60. They're 30 cheaper than they were pre-change.
Yes. Okay. So you could run. So what's happening is that we're seeing blocks of between 200 or not 200. That would be terrifying. Normally between probably 120 and 150 bloodletters. I think Terry Pike ran like 150 bloodletters and like 60 plague bearers or something. 30 plague bearers. 60 plague bearers and like 100. Yeah. Anyways, it was a lot of dudes that are really scary. And the other aspect of Murder Host is that before the game begins, all of them get a 2d6 Vanguard movement.
So average of 7.
Everybody moves 7 inches, basically. Mm-hmm. And then if you've maxed it out, so you've filled it out with all 8 units plus the hero, you get that 2d6 every turn within 8 inches of the hero. And so if you have them organized in any like any type of fanned out formation, you can reach a lot of those units all moving 2d6 at the start. So you can reliably move like 14 off of the line in the hero phase. You get a 5 base move, you're at 19. You're 5 inches off of the enemy line at the start at your charge phase. So 5-inch charges basically across the line for anything that they had that started on the line, which with some of these objectives, like a lot of them, you're going to be on the line because you're trying to get to the objective. So not only, so these bloodletters have rushed over all the objectives that are in no man's land, for example, and then they can charge, you know, the front of the line, which is significant for something like Scorched Earth, where they charge your points. And if they're on 32 mil bases, so they have to do some killing, especially if the enemy's on 25 mils. But okay, so anyway, so let me point out they have killing power because these guys do mortal wounds on 6s. They have mobility,
and obviously lower most of the turn, given the other.
Yeah, and they have abilities. Yeah, like if they're more than 20 models, they get +1. If they're running like pure Chaos Legions, which they were, they could do like a Lord of War and get another +1 to hit potentially. So they can, and if like on top of all that, if you had like a Bloodsecrator, you could make them all immune to battle shock and give them +1 attack, and just it's corn, all the stacking corn stuff. So they have killy power. They're super killy. They are highly mobile in Murder Host because they're just run circles. It's like super destruction move the whole time. Mm-hmm. They are low drops, so reliability. Now they don't have durability. These guys are 5-up saves, so like anybody with a -2 red is just going to shut off their saves.
I mean, just mass damage in general. Like this is sort of anything that puts a lot of damage, even without Ren. It just, massive amounts of shots or high numbers of attacks. Anything where like if you plow into them with one big unit that generates a lot of attacks, and you're on the charge and you go first. You're gonna blow a lot of these guys off the table pretty fast. God, if you have any kind of Rend, it just becomes a bloodbath pretty quick. Yeah, indeed. So they're definitely not tough.
Yeah, they're not tough. So you have reliability, like some reliability, like there are aspects. The fact that you have like 120 of them, 150 of them, that's fairly reliable because you can lose a couple units of 30. And still, like, okay, you blew up my front line of 30. The next 30 comes charging in and chops everything that charge that unit. So, like, it becomes a checkers match of like, I take your piece, you take my piece, and back and forth.
Sure.
So the fact that they have so many bodies is itself an aspect of reliability. And then bodies, they definitely have bodies. So, like, the Murder Host is an example of like, so when I say something like, I think this is going to be good in the meta, it's often because it has all of those factors, and it also is going to play well against the offenses or the defenses of other popular lists.
Sure.
So
yeah, I mean, and so your point with Scorched Earth that you were on about was obviously they can charge across and blow it up turn 1, right? Now, again, there are ways to
all
stop
3
that.
of them.
Sure. Assuming they had enough units and blah, 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 blah. As was pointed out, Terry Pike didn't exactly do great in that tournament. I think he came in 55th. By the by.
Sure.
But anyway, I mean, there was a Murder Host up at the top. There were many Murder Hosts in this event, so whatever. But like, even in a non-skew format, that is to say, you could still see 2 or 3 large units of these, right?
Yep. And you could easily run like 120 of these guys, so only get the first turn. But then also run like Gore Pilgrims and have like a full Gore Pilgrims with the 2 priests and the Bloodsecrator and be a 2-drop army. Like that's not outside of the like,
yeah. I don't want to get too deep into Terry's thing down at the bottom. I'll stick up to the top. But yes, there's a bunch of different elements to that. But the point is that like, so okay, there are ways to counter this. The question is, like, and there's been lots of discussion. I'm not sure that I see the Scorched Earth problem as a huge thing. Like that is to say, is it a huge problem that you could get across, get a bigger unit on, take it from them, and then destroy it, more or less immediately? Possibly. Like I can see it being a sort of not fun thing that you can raise it turn 1. Obviously, there is stuff. If you know it's coming, there's stuff you could do. If you've got your own Vanguard stuff, you can get in the way. If you've got your own big enough units, you can sit on it with a 40, so they're 30, can't steal it from you. And, whatever, right?
Yep.
Like it's not that there aren't things you can do. You can play backwards toward the back and hope they fail the, their actual distance or their charge or whatever to get there. There are different elements.
Which, by the way, like that doesn't work. Like if you actually run the math on that, it's like, let's say you stay at the 3 inches back from the line. If they only need to roll a 2 on their run in order to get within range to cap the point.
Sure, like there's all sorts of different like you are talking about a very swingy set of numbers, namely like the gas in this engine.
There are 46 random. Yeah,
correct. Yeah, like that means your range is 4 to 24, right? Mm-hmm. Now, yes, the average is 14, but I've rolled D&D characters, thousands of them in my life. Okay. Sure. And 46 was the dice I used for every one of those rolls. And let me tell you what, those are all over the board.
So let's say that you botch 1 out of 3 at the start of each of your games. You're starting up 2 of their points destroyed.
Again,
that's pretty good numbers.
Maybe not. Again, as Jeff just pointed out, something else I was going to comment on as well. This assumes you've got a straight shot, that there's not terrain in the way and things like that can also make a difference. Like, my point is, this isn't the straight gimme. These things aren't like, it isn't a math expression for them to run across the table, the blank virtual space, and hit this thing. I'm not saying it won't happen or it doesn't happen or couldn't happen. It did happen. Okay. Yeah. I am saying that it is also not an automatic thing. And I don't know where the number is, but it is definitely some number that is less than 1 and more than 0.
Sure.
Where in there, I don't know.
And are we okay with people basically functionally, almost losing the game turn 1 at the top of 1 before they get to do anything?
Yeah, and what I would say is
acceptable.
Sure, that seems like it seems unfun, like an unfun experience. And I think the solution to this is pretty easy. You could just change the scenario so you can't raise it in turn 1 or something like that, right? Like there's
honestly, like move the points back 2 inches.
Sure, like
so you can actually deploy in front of them. And so even on a charge, they're not going to get any models, or 3 inches. You move back 3 inches, they don't get any models even in the range if you deploy on the line. Yep. So, or make it so that they can't raise a point if there's any enemy models within 6 inches or whatever.
Sure. There's another one. Yep. Like that's my point. There's like probably 10 easy ways to change it that really just require a slight change to the scenario.
Yeah. And this is like, let's be very clear. I don't know that this is a problem with Murder Host. Like Murder Host is very strong. Don't get me wrong. But I think there are counters to it. I think this is a scenario design problem. Like, I don't think this is necessarily a Murder Host problem. I think this is a scenario problem.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's obviously that, and that the Murder Host ended up taking first place, right? But with Chaos Allegiance.
Yep.
For
because they get +1 to hit. Like,
and also for Cunning Deceiver, right?
No, they didn't run Cunning. That's what I'm saying. I'm pretty sure that they ran the Art of War, which gives them a +1 to hit 50% of the time.
Okay. I wasn't sure which one they used.
Yeah, I think that's which one they used, which ends up, it's good.
Okay. So I mean, I think that obviously Khorne, especially things like Murder Host, stuff like that, still plenty strong. Yep. I feel like it ticks a lot of the boxes you said. I don't think Khorne has any real threat of not being at least, a pretty reliable competitor in the new meta.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's, I haven't seen enough evidence yet to make me think that like Khorne is somehow bent.
Yeah.
And that there's no answer to it. I've seen, if anything, evidence to the contrary. But I will say that I think you'll see it.
I think Khorne will be strong. Like that's what
James Hyde, by the way, said they did run Cunning Deceiver. So
did they run it? Okay, there you go. Hey, I mean, it's a great trait. That's what I ran. So
sure. It helps protect those guys for at least some amount of time.
Right, because they're getting in turn 1. And they're gonna have 2 rounds of melee at -1, which I mean that's why I ran it, was because my Chaos Warriors would get 2 full,
it helps some of that reliability problem you were talking about. Sure.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about the Tzeentch?
Yeah, like so I just want to talk about just armies in general.
Sure.
Like, who are armies in general that are winners in this constellation? I think that Tzeentch falls into that. Tzeentch Demons particularly. They have Change Host, which is a single drop that lets you choose a bunch of heroes, lets you choose a big bird. lets you choose a bunch of demons in any order. There's no cap on the number of units in the Tzeentch Change Host. So that is a single drop army. Like, it's super easy to get to a single drop. There's no reason not to be a single drop with that force. They have the dice, so they can control. They can have a bunch of spellcasters. They can teleport around, so it has the high mobility. And you can stretch out some. You can't stretch out to the degree that you could, but you can still move stuff around. Even in killing, you have summoning in that list, which is another aspect of reliability, putting units that you need where you need them.
I would also argue it's power projection, especially with some of those units' ranged abilities, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's power projection and it's like reliability, durability. The reality is, and I don't think most people have, like most Tzeentch players I haven't seen do this, but like, why don't we see more Tzeentch players like summoning a block of 20 Plague Bearers onto points? I guess like pinks do that if you can multiply them out. They'll do something similar. But they can have summoning of Bloodthirsters and of anything else. I mean, whatever they need, they can put on the table for killing, or durability, or any of those things.
In a much more reliable way than most because of the nature of their spellcasting.
Right. That's exactly right. And so I think Tzeentch will continue to be a top contender. It should be no surprise for anybody that's been following him on Twitter that Reliant is running Tzeentch Change Host, because, of course, like, it's a solid list, and I think that it's highly competitive. Reliant has been on record to say that he thinks it's even better. It's a perfect counter, he believes, to Murderer Host. And obviously Reliant himself has won a number of different big events, so he knows what he's talking about. So Tzeentch Change Host, I think, will continue to be competitive. I don't know about a lot of the other stuff. I've really tried to build a good Zangor list. Like, I've really tried to put together a Zangor list that can throw down with the best of them, and I've really struggled. I fall short always in some aspect. Like, I'm never content with where I'm at with building a Zangor list. So I'll figure it out one day, but I think that most of the Arcanites are lacking unless you're running a Fatesworn. I think that Fatesworn has the ability to be competitive. They have a built-in. So for those of you who don't know, Fatesworn is like a 10-unit. Any Tzeentch mortals can be included in a 10-unit drop. It's only 100 points, so it's
got cheaper.
Got cheaper. It's a super affordable battalion. Those 100 points are out of Everchosen, so those need to come out of your ally list. But the Fatesworn, what it does is it increases Ren by 1 on anybody. Like, anything that doesn't have Ren goes to Ren 1. So like Chaos Knights, which just got cheaper, can get like 5 attacks around at Ren 1 or something ridiculous.
10.
Per model, 10 per model.
No.
You're just saying 10 across the unit.
That's if you're using like a particular loadout. There's different loadouts to them.
Got it. And if you deploy units in 9s, which are really easy to do now that like Chaos Warriors have moved to 5 models, and now that with the Knights and all that, if you move those to 9s, you can easily be at get the extra 6-up ward save. The War Shrine's gotten cheaper, which can fit in there, which is another 6-up ward save. That increases reliability because it makes units more durable, and it actually plays well to the meta because of how sharply mortal wounds are relied upon.
I mean, realistically, you can be in a situation where your main blocks are 5-up, 6-up, 6-up against mortal wounds, right? Because of their chaos shields. Which is, given that they're already pretty tough things, that ain't too shabby.
Yep. And, the other thing is that across the Tzeentch army, for those of you guys that haven't looked at it, so much of what they're special Tzeentch abilities, so when you get into Tzeentch, what you get is your free ability most of the time is reroll armor saves. And so when we're talking about reliability, like your Chaos Lord and Demonic Mount has a 4-up base for rerollable save. The War Shrine gives a rerollable save to all Tzeentch folks. So they hand out those rerollables. And so what ends up happening is that only further increases the reliability. So the battalion, low on drops, you can easily be 1 or 2 drop in that battalion. It's going to get the dice, so you can get the numbers that you need when you need them. It can have a bunch of spellcasters. It can play in basically all the phases. It can have the Kairos or the Kairos. The Carrick Acolytes. The Carrick Acolytes now have Rend when you throw them in that battalion. So all of their little shooties at 18 inches are at -1 Rend for 10 for 100 points. Too shabby. They're also counting as battle line. So there's just a lot of options with Fatesworn. I think that there is a competitive list there. I've spun out a number of those lists, and I think that they can run Sail. Like, here's the other half of this. They can run Sail for 120 points to be a 2-drop army. You can't include them in a battalion, but run Sail, and then when you run Sail, he is a
teleportation engine for much of your stuff.
Yeah, he's a teleportation
your chaos engine. Your Chaos Knights and your Chaos Warriors can be teleported around the board.
Yes, your Chaos Warriors, your Chaos Knights, all of that, because all of those are slaves to darkness. So his nerf doesn't do a lot for that. So Sail kind of shortcuts that because he's doing what he's been designed to do. So there's a lot of options. I think with there's potential with Fatesworn. I don't think it's going to be like highly competitive, but I think it'll be a solid tier 2 list. That I think some people could potentially win tournaments if the right pilots are behind those lists. What other lists?
Let's talk about Fire Slayers, because obviously they've come back in a big way.
I don't want to talk about Fire Slayers.
You don't want to talk about Fire Slayers. Okay. Are we going to have Kenny back on the show soon and do a Fire Slayers deep dive? Is that why you don't want to talk about Fire Slayers?
No, I just don't want to. I don't want to tip my hand.
Oh, okay. Trying to keep your tech secret.
Yeah, no. Fire Slayers are solid. The reality is that I think that they are competitive. I think that they are. If anybody is a big winner here, Fire Slayers are the big winner. They're the new, they're the big winner of this new world. Korn was awesome in the spring. It was still doing work with its new book. Tzeentch was still winning tournaments. Fire Slayers were not. And with their new abilities, for those of you who don't know, their battalion ability or their allegiance abilities, they get a handful of runes that they can activate. They get to choose what they activate, so they choose what they want when they want. There's always a chance of augmented. You don't rely on the augment. You always plan for the base ability when you activate them. And it can make you battle shock immune or increase rend or rerolls, all the things that you need with that force, it does. And on top of that, they have a battalion where it gives you they have the bodies issue solved, because they can have a bunch of Volkite Berserkers that are 330 for 30 of them. So they are more. They're 60 points more than your Bloodletter blocks, but they're at a 5-up in the turns that you don't charge. If you go to the Sling Shield, which I would always do, you go to 4-ups on your base save, and then if they're over 20 models, they have a 4-up ward save. So all those mortal wounds that are getting spit out, they are getting saves, a 4-up, then a 5-up, then a 6-up, based on how many models were left in the unit. They're also 2 attacks per model with -1 rend, so 4-up, 4-up. So they're really good. You're going to run, and so you can, as far as core infantry goes, I think they're probably one of the best battle line infantry options in the game.
Sure. We still saw it too. Well, yeah. I won't dig it. We can not dig in too deep if you want to.
No, it's fine. I don't care. I mean, the reality is that Fire Slayers are a known quantity. They're going to be performing at every event, and people are going to see what works. And the reality is that they have the ability to deep strike any unit that they want just by paying 80 points for an extra hero. And then after that turn that they deep strike, that hero can then give that unit that they just deep striked reroll all failed wounds just persistently until that hero dies. And so I think that you're going to see a lot of Rune Smiters on the board. And for the turn they pop up, you'll probably see a Rune Smiter on Magnadroth pop his big reroll all wounds. So basically all of those units will always have reroll all failed wounds all the time. You can just about bet on that. It's going to obviously be some mix of either the Volkite Battalion, which is an excellent battalion for those of you guys that haven't seen it. It is basically so here's a funny story. It doubles the number if they're near their allies. You can increase your pylon by D3 inches. So you're 3 plus a D3. which is not a bad pile-in, especially if anybody's watched my pile-in like shenanigan videos for like rotating around and doing stuff like that. So those extra distances are going to always be welcome. They have, and then they also, it doubles the number of like axe throws they get, which seems like just a really ghetto, like, oh wait, great, you have an 8-inch throw at 4 up, 4 up. Great, you have 2 throws at 4 up, 4 up, 8 inches. But like their rune increases that range to 16 inches. And so now, like, when let's say you had 2 Volkite blocks pop up, like, let's say they deep strike.
Sure.
You're gonna roll 120 axe throws. Like, let me just point that out. And if you get the augmented rune, you get rerolls on those.
Yeah. I was just funny. I was just grabbing the book because I was literally trying to remember, like, what's the enhanced rune on that?
Yeah.
It's rerolls. Yeah, it's rerolls, hit rolls of 1 with the axes. Yeah.
Yep. So that's really good. Like, really good. And I think the Rune Smiter, I don't know if it's only the melee that they reroll wounds. I can tell you that real quick. But the Rune Smiter with their buff, reroll all failed wounds. So they're already rerolling failed wounds on those axe throws, by the way, as well. On the 4 up, 120 throws for those 2 deep strike units. And
so they're going to generate a lot of wounds.
They're going to generate. So they're going to throw 120 axes, and then they're going to charge, and you roll like a dice for everyone that's charging, every model that's charging, no matter the range. If the unit touches you, however many Fire Slayers you have, you roll a dice for all of them. Every 6 you generate is going to do a mortal wound to a unit that they end within half inch. So, like 2 blocks of these guys are going to like throw 120 axes and immediately generate 12 mortal wounds to whatever they charge. And then they start hacking at 2 attacks per model, -1 rend, reroll all wounds. Like, these guys are going to be really scary.
I feel like we need to like have some form of like entry into the social contract about having preset stacks of dice for like these kinds of nonsensory. That's like, this is my stack of 120 dice I rolled and whatever, like, or my stack of 60. Just because of the insanity of what you're describing here. But sure, the amount of time, the amount of rolls you're going to put out for it to accomplish, not a huge amount, probably, against many units. I mean, some units you just decimate them.
Like 120, like 100
in the modern
throws,
sense of the word.
Like so 120 throws. Half of them are going to land, so 60 of them are going to hit.
Well, yeah, we'll assume non-enhanced for rune.
Like, yeah, non-enhanced. Like 60 of them hit.
Yep.
And then 30 of them will wound. But you're going to re-roll failed wounds, so another 15 so 45 are going to wound.
Sure.
Even against a 4-up save, you're doing like 20 wounds, like 22 wounds out of the gate, and then another 12 mortal wounds on top of that. Like, that's before any activations happen. Like, let's be very clear about this.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So
we either that or like dice rolling programs that display results need to become legitimate at tournaments. So I can just like click a button on the iPad and be like, there's my results, just like sort, filter, delete all less than 3. Okay, I have this many positives. That'll never happen. But just like,
but yeah,
the physical nature of rolling the dice is something sacred.
Yep.
But so it's a lot.
So I'm only talking about 2 units. Deep striking, like you have another 30 block that you can have guarding objectives. Like you can easily get 3 to 4 blocks of 30 troops in these lists. So guarding units and stretching them out and doing other things. You can get 2 magma droths pretty easily backing these guys up. I didn't mention this, but they also have a 3d6 charge. All these guys, if you move up, are going to have a 3d6 charge. Drop the lowest, or 3d6. Re-roll one of those 3 dice and drop the lowest on your charges.
Sure.
And they're piling in for 3 plus a D3 inches. Fire Slayers are the new hotness. You will get rerolls, James, because you're gonna pop. You're gonna have a Rune Smiter on Magmadroth with the 20-inch Greater Ritual of Awakening, and so the Rune Smiter on Magmadroth makes all units within 20 inches of him activate, and you're gonna run a tail back to be within 20 inches. And so. Yeah, you're gonna get rerolls on every turn.
I would just like to say I love Mitch's comment. I can't wait for that to happen. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. Like, this is why I don't want to. This is why I don't want to like tip my hand, because I know that GW is like, nerf it, get it. Tom's talking about it. We know what it does. Get rid of it.
Sure. I look forward to that day.
That's the weather vein of like, what is Tom talking about? Let's nerf that.
I'm sure that's exactly how it goes.
Yes. So Fire Slayers are going to be good, and then the other thing happens is their runes are reliable. So whatever rune you need, you can choose to activate. Yeah. Sure. That's the big deal. Like, so this is why, for example, like I'm on the edge for Nurgle right now. Okay. Like, we don't have the traits, we don't have the items for the new battle tome, but we have the mechanic. And the problem is the mechanic's random. You start with a random d6, so you don't get to choose where it is in the thing. So you could be getting like extra move late in the game when you don't really need it for Nurgle units, stuff like that. So I don't have a lot of hope. Like, I'm skeptical of whether Nurgle, like the Nurgle legions, will be able to compete. I still think like plague touched warbands, for example. Anyways, yeah,
it's fine. So obviously we had fourth and fifth place went still to Stormcast, and I don't think there was any question that Stormcast were still going to be.
Yep.
Very competitive.
Yeah, like I think that Stormcast have a lot of really interesting tools that and I think so one of the biggest like boons of Stormcast is the fact that they have all of Order as allies. And I don't think that people have really like understood the significance of this. Because they can have in building their list any tools that they need.
Well, I mean, by the way, on the flip side of this, almost everything, everything in Order has them as allies.
Yes.
So, like, I suspect that you're going to see lots of lists that start having Stormcast pop up in them as allies. Like, not even, not as the main force.
Like, so for example, go ahead.
Sylvaneth. Will probably, like, if they to replace the role that Kurnoth Hunters played, they'll probably go fish out Stormcast shooters. Right, like that would be one option to go. So,
yeah, like so, getting the range then in the crossbows. So the Raptors, either the Hurricane crossbows or the Long Strikes, are a great solution if somebody needs range. So an interesting thing is that they have like the little interceptor, like the Aetherwing Hawks.
Yeah,
that get a free move in the charge phase. So like that could be a solution to Murder Host. Is including one of the crossbow units on the line in between two objectives, and then on the edge of their range, you put Aether Wing units that get to move out on the charge and can block two objectives. Like if you measure it in Scorched Earth, like I was doing the math, you could actually like spread that unit out and then put the Aether Wings and get enough so that you could block two objectives for a round of movement just by having the little Aether Wings out there in an arc to keep the Murder Host off of your point.
Huh.
Okay. And so, like, so there are possibilities, is what I would say. So I think that Stormcast have good allies, but are good allies. But I like in KO, for example, one of my favorite new additions is the Knight Azeros. Is a great addition.
Who's going to be showing up on so many tables?
Is a great addition to KO because the Knight Azeros it like gives rerolls of 1 to hit on range attacks within 8 inches, and he's an 80-point hero, 5 wounds, 3-up save. He's a great like chaff blocker. He's a great like point engager. Like you can send him as a vanguard, and he has this awesome like D6 mortal wound bomb for all units within 8 inches. Running 3 of these guys
for chaos.
For chaos. Running 3 of these guys or 4 of these guys in a KO list where you're not running a lot of heroes anyways. Is not a bad idea, is what I would say. You know, like doing a nuclear option for your Knight Azeros, like send them all in 46 mortal wounds to all chaos units within 8 inches is not too shabby.
Yeah, I mean, the Azeros is really interesting because he's so cheap and he's highly mobile.
Yep.
He's tough enough, you know what I mean, for his point cost.
Sit him on terrain, he's a 2-up.
Sure, and he's got interesting utility. And he's strong against the meta. If there is a lot of Khorne and Tzeentch, but last time I checked, those are chaos armies.
Yep. Right. So each one is doing a D6 mortal wounds to all units within 8 inches. Yeah. So Knight Azero. So they're great allies. But more than that, like let's talk about Stormcast armies. What they can pull in So one of the greatest tools, you know, I had tipped my hand in Warhammer TV a couple weeks back, for the Daughters of Cain. The Blood Rack Medusas are really good for those of you guys that don't know. Blood Rack Medusas have a 10-inch like range stare attack, and it does you roll dice for every model in the unit that it attacks, not within range, but for the unit that it attacks. Roll dice for every one of them, and on every 6 you rolled, it does a mortal wound to that unit. You can take these guys in like units. So like 2 of these guys, you would roll, both of them, if they start at the same unit, you'd roll 2 dice for every model, a mortal wound on every 6, which means that against a 60 model, like 60 model
Are you talking about so against something like zombies? Is that what you're saying?
Like zombies, or against like any of the big horde units, they're gonna just dish out just a metric shit ton of dice.
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry, not on a 6-up. It's on a 5-up. They do their damage. And so like against 60, they're going to generate 40 mortal wounds.
Sure.
Because the attacks. I mean, because the attacks are resolving at the simultaneously. So you don't roll one then roll the other if they're a unit. You're doing the stare at the same time. So one of the big challenges of these guys, they have like an 8-inch move. They're going to get sniped off the table right away. Well, if you're Stormcast and you include these guys in your army, you can lightning chariot them. So you lightning chariot them, you drop them 9 inches off of any unit that you want to destroy, a pair of these guys, 240 points. And those 2 will make short work of any unit that they shoot at. Any 1 wound unit, 1 wound per model unit they shoot at, they will destroy between battle shock and just the straight number of wounds that they do. Yeah. So that's just one example of like Stormcast, them pulling in allies. Skink clouds, yep, that's a real thing, and Stormcast can do it real well. They can pull in two huge blocks. So those are some of the tactics for some of the highest.
Your point being they have plenty of ability to fish best in class out of all the other armies.
Yes. Sure. So Stormcast will continue to probably perform well moving forward. What else? So of the new allegiances, let's talk about those. I think that Darkling Coven will probably not perform well. Because they don't have a ability to fish a lot of they don't have they're missing some element of the 4.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it'd be too easy to weaken the units. That's the problem, to push them down below where the numbers are, where things start triggering. And even then, like, it's a neat ability, but it wasn't like it's that backbreaking anyways. Like them all, getting together to get to their powerful number stuff, Yep. The big number stuff wasn't generally that interesting anyways. Yep. I think it's a fun, fluffy ability. It's cool. I don't think it's going to move the needle.
It's not going to move the needle. Like competitively, they're not going to be real competitive. I think that Free Guild could be. I think we'll see if they are. It's all going to be probably on the backs of handgunners.
I mean, Ant just threw up a battle report with if you want to watch some madness, go to HR, go to Ant, formerly Sustainable Center. I hate that he changed his channel name because now I have to say formerly the Sustainable Center every single time. It's like Prince changing his name to the symbol. Anyways, Ant just put up a battle report with his KO fighting a Free People's Army that had 90 handgunners backed by a Huracanum and 20 pistoliers and stuff. And I mean, the KO won. It ended up being I won't give it away beyond saying that the KO won. But it was a bloodbath of a fight. Sure.
I am sure. And so I think that Free Guild has some competitive lists in there. Inevitably, it's going to be based on handgunners. They might have some strafers in there for the archers, like for the free move to kind of block off some stuff. So they have a little
chances are there's probably also some of the just basic infantry dudes in there. Because that way they can trigger off their detachment rules and stuff like that. And you've got to have the regular guard.
They will have those in there by default. Yes, but those aren't going to be where the power's at. The power's going to be at the with the handgunners.
Yeah. So we can answer and get Mitch to to not kill us.
Yep.
I mean, like, how real are Seraphon? So let's talk about at Blackout.
Yeah.
You didn't have a huge number of Seraphon competing overall.
Right.
But you know, they took what, 11th, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't count the total number of Seraphon in the tournament, but I know there were like 2 in the top 30, I think, if memory serves. I'm gonna say that, and that sounds right enough.
Yeah.
So here's my question: is the Seraphon thing overblown, or is the Seraphon thing real?
Real.
Okay.
Yep.
You think that the combination of the teleporting plus their existing abilities will be enough or not? Do they have the killing power?
I don't think so.
Because that's when I look at their army, that's what seems to be the biggest challenge.
They are lacking killing power. I was building a list. I was talking with a community member who reached out to me about Seraphon, and I began building a list. I built a bunch of lists, you know, looking through all their stuff. And the biggest challenge that Seraphon are going to always face, always, is that they don't have a lot of killy units. They can get, there's multiple battalions that they can get to basically 3 or 4 drop really easy. Like 2 drop sometimes, 3 drop regularly. Like with 1 battalion and a Slan is what you would drop. And then you'd summon everything else with the Slan.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so like the Temple Guard battalion is really good. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with it or not. Like you could easily get, if you don't charge, all of your Temple Guard are going to be at like 3 attacks, 3 up, neg 1 Ren, D3 damage.
Okay.
So and you have
seems pretty good.
Yeah, it seems pretty good. You can have multiple blocks of these guys, 20 guys. The problem and they're all 2-up rerollable saves.
Also seems pretty strong.
But you're only going to have like 50 of these 1 wound guys or so, you know, and that's it. And then you're going to have to like summon additional like stuff. And I just don't know if like they're killy, but it's a super elite for a 1 wound model, and no protection against mortal wounds.
Sure.
So that's the most killy that you can get. I think that skink clouds are probably going to be more popular, like 3 blocks of 40, like drop the battalion, another block of 40, and a Slan. So there'll be 3 drop armies, summon everything else.
And I assume the plan with the skinks is you just basically, like with your normal skinks, is you just literally use them to engage, hold, and then run away as soon as they get touched.
Yeah. And they'll like body block. You'll drop. They'll body block, and you'll probably set up against the back of the table. The Seraphon player will, because the reality is that like they can teleport 1 or 2 blocks out, and they can summon out, and so they don't need to be up, and they're super susceptible to alpha striking. So if you could remove the Slan turn 1, it would be very bad for them. Which like Tzeentch very well could remove the Slan turn 1.
Sure, if the fat frog dies, a lot of things go offline.
And you lose your summoning, which you're probably going to have like 600 points in summoning. If you really want to be like a 2-drop army, 3-drop army, you're going to have 600 points in summoning probably.
Sure.
And so what's going to end up happening is I think they're competitive. I think they're going to win because if they don't have a Tzeentch matchup, if they don't have a 1-drop matchup, they're going to outdrop most people. They'll be able to like move stuff out on objectives. So they're in general, I think they would win most matchups. But when they come against the other tier 1 armies, I think that it's going to be an uphill battle, is what I would say, because like the quality of the units themselves are going to be difficult. Now, I think with a good pilot behind it, I think a Seraphon player could easily win tourneys. So don't misunderstand me. Like I think that Seraphon are going to be like a tier 1.5 army. I think that the quality of the unit is what is hurting the Seraphon the most.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So Slaanesh took 6th place.
Yeah.
Do you know what was in that Slaanesh list? I have no idea.
I don't, but Slaanesh is awesome. Like their units, like I have to be honest, like I was back at Adepticon last year, I had on my list painting up a bunch of like Hellstriders. Sure. For my Nurgle list because of the neg 1 penalty broadcasting from the Enrapturing banners. And it stacks with everything else. And so that combined with like the triple pylon or 3 generals and multiple pylons, and like Slaanesh is set up to do very well.
I really want to know what that Slaanesh list contained and how it worked and its experiences. Because it was down at like 6th place. I didn't see a lot of people talking about it. That was the problem, right?
Yep.
Because it's sort of like people talked a lot about the top 5.
Yep.
And then like there was the Slanesh list. I didn't really.
And you're like, there's Slanesh.
I was so excited to see it, but like what was interesting about it was I assume that the way this works, and when I'm looking at the results, is the KP total is like what your kill point total is. That what that is?
Yep. Okay. Like how many things you're murdering.
All right. So what's fascinating about the kill point total, if you look at that list, is that the Slanesh has like it's just crushed by everything else in that top 8.
Yeah, like they're not killing things; they're out objectiving people.
We can verb that, sure.
Yes, they're winning the objective war.
Yeah. So it was just it's interesting to me. I would love to know more about from somebody who was there or who saw that list or how it played. I haven't seen a lot of discussion or coverage of it, and I was really curious as to what it ran and how it did and what did it pick? Like, was it the movie one? Did it use the 3 generals one? You know, just I'm interested to see what they're doing. I've built a couple Slanesh lists. I'm pretty excited about it. But I don't know what like I'm interested to see what people are doing to be competitive options. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let me just say, I think that there's a competitive list there. Like, I think that Slanesh has the tools that it needs to be really scary. Like, really.
I will say, I think it has the tools within this meta and these scenarios to be with the right list to be a tier 2 list. It will never be with its current unit selection a tier 1 list.
No, I would agree with that. Yep. And that's what I said. Like, I think it can be competitive. I don't think like I wouldn't consider it a tier 1 or even a tier 1.5. Like, it's definitely like a solid tier 2. I think that just talking about chaos, I think that my Nurgle Plague Touch could be a solid 1.5.
Well, the question is like the problem with the reason I don't even want to discuss your Nurgle.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yep.
Because we're on the edge of Nurgle being a completely different ballgame, right?
Yeah.
We're like the strong belief right now is that there's a Nurgle battle tome coming, and
there is,
and so like. It's going to be like a Marvel movies, like the world is changing. Like as soon as you get to Battle Tome, like that's it. The world has changed, right? Like I don't.
Yeah, well, maybe I don't know. Like
the world has changed in some way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Even if that change is just that it all sucks and you've got to take the generic chaos abilities always.
Well, let me just say, like the generic chaos abilities, even for Nurgle, are pretty good. Like it's doing everything that I want it to do in the basic chaos with Cunning Deceiver, with that stuff. So I mean, it would have to have some ball breaker abilities in the traits and items in order for me to be like, I'm in, or give me a bunch of extra prayers with my pestilence, plague monks or something. Like it'd have to go that direction in order to really be good.
Tom, have you ever played Mitch at a tournament?
In tournament play, no.
Okay.
I've played him. Mitch and I played a game the night before the tournament, and I beat Mitch at the top of 1.
All right, fair enough. Was it the top of 1 or bottom of 1?
It was top of 1. I won it. I outdropped him. He was playing his it's the list that I took to Adepticon that I played against Caleb with. Gotcha. I basically took all the objectives and walled them off, and he's like, yeah, I can't win this.
Okay. Well,
and we sat back, and that's when they convinced him and Jeff Egan and them convinced me that I needed to take that. I needed it was Jeff wasn't there. It was David
Griffin.
Dave Griffin and him and Kale and Mitch, where we just sat and strategized, talked around how Mitch might be able to win. We were all like, nope, you're screwed, Mitch. Sorry, you've lost the game.
Sure. The question didn't come up, so I wanted to get the answer out there.
So that's the only time that Mitch and I have played.
There you go. Okay. So, I mean, I think here's what it comes to me at the end of this discussion. I mean, this seems like a trite answer, but I think it's a good answer.
Yeah.
The healthy thing to me is that what we've said about a lot of these armies is that there's a lot of people floating around in between what you've classically referred to, and I hate, as tier 2 and tier 1, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a pretty thick field in there.
Okay? Yeah. Like there's a lot more that's what I would call competitive now.
Yeah.
Than was in the last GHB. Because you had to deal with a number of armies that there just weren't easy solutions for.
Right.
The snowball at 18 inches with unkillable Like you had to be able to truly weather the storm of snowballs in order to be able to be competitive at the highest tier in the last GHB.
Yeah, and like we focused mainly on the Blackout results.
Yep.
But obviously this is just one tournament. There's plenty of lists we haven't touched on. Like we haven't touched on Bone Splitters and Beast Claws and what's become of them. And part of that is I don't know how they're going to perform. There was lots of changes with them, and my answer would be I need more data before I make any decision on them. Like we have some small amount of paltry data on the other ones. Like Bone Splitters came in 7th overall, but again, I have no idea what their army list was because I didn't see a list for that one. I think that on the whole, there's been a lot of hay made of Soul Blight, and I could easily see something coming out of that. Just because there is a lot of the ability to take, like, say, a lot of Blood Knights and make them fly and move pretty far, pretty fast is not something to be underestimated, right?
Yeah.
Like that's strong mobility.
No, certainly. I'm trying to think of the other new stuff, like what might actually be like big winners. Soul Blight looks enticing to me. They have a body issue.
Sure.
I mean, you have to just run like just an asinine amount of zombies probably in your allies.
Sure, you can always just ally in a lot of zombies.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else is gonna, I think, do well in the meta. I actually don't have a lot of hope for Night Haunt. Because of how prevalent mortal wounds are. I think that they're all 6 up, like, or I guess they can technically get to 5 with the trait, but I don't think Night Haunt are going to be able to sustain.
Well, we'll see. I mean, they definitely have, like, against armies that can't deal a high amount of mortal wounds or any mortal wounds. They are tough as nails.
Yes, they are. Yep.
Like being just immune to rend across the board is not something to be underestimated.
Yep. And they can still get the bonus to saves and
sure. And they can deal, most of their units do have some ability to deal mortal wounds themselves.
Yep.
Sure. They've still got the Mourngul, which even in his weakened state to mortal wounds, he's still, like, again, absent those mortal wounds, that dude's still a monster. Like he's pretty scary.
But they don't have bodies, and that's the problem.
Sure.
They're gonna have objectives just stolen right out from underneath them. Like what's it called? When we do the not conflagration, whatever it's called. The objectives burning raising one. I've just blanked on it.
Scorched Earth.
Scorched Earth. Like, it's just you're gonna have to just move units within range, and they won't have enough bodies to hold those objectives.
Sure. I mean, again, the allies could solve some of this problem, certainly, but sure.
Yeah.
Like, there's going to be a lot of allied-in zombies in some of these armies. That's probably
I don't even know if they have really weird allies, so I'd have to double-check Night Haunt, but they don't have, like, the allies that we would want them to have, is what I would say.
Sure.
What else? We've done Chaos, we've done Wanderers. Wanderers, I think, are going to suffer from the same problem that Seraphon had. They have a quality of unit problem. They have some good skirmish stuff. I love their Eternal Guard, so don't misunderstand me. But they're going to be high drop armies. So they're not going to be able to control who goes first. And they're going to have some mobility, but it's going to be like, if you'll notice, people haven't thought about how the table orientation changes. For some of the scenarios, and it really moves the edges of the board far away when it's like the diagonal ones and stuff like that to some of those objectives, such that, like, moving in on board edges isn't real good on those objectives. If you go and look at them, like, not as good as, like, drops.
Sure, but that being said, at the same time, there's some of the other scenarios where it's real good.
No, it is. No, I'm not gonna discount that at all.
Sure.
So, I mean, what I would say is that I think that Wanderers have a quality of unit problem, and I don't know how they solve that.
Well, I mean, I'm so up in the air on these guys because I think those Eternal Guard do have some strong capabilities. I really do.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
they can just be like the toughest elves in history. Like it's ridiculous.
Yep.
But at the same time, they suffer from a lot of the same stuff as before. I mean, they do have,
and you're not going to fit a 30 block in a terrain piece. So stop fooling yourselves. You're not going to get that +1 with 30 models.
I think you could probably get 30 Eternal Guard onto a Sylvaneth Wildwood.
Like a 3-base Sylvaneth Wildwood, maybe.
Yeah, sure. That's what I'm saying. Yes.
But like, yeah, I don't see a lot of Sylvaneth Wildwood sitting at tournaments though. Like I see Hill, like I see other things that aren't so like that big.
Sure. If you've got like just a small set of ruins, which is often what it is, right? It's often like these small collections of ruins at tournaments, and like
like a tower.
Sure, and most of them aren't really made to have 30 models standing on them in these small ruin things. So I accept that. Depends on this is one of those things. Anytime, it's always been the challenge. Anytime you have interactions with terrain and you're talking about tournament play, suddenly like all predictability goes out the window because different tournaments have very different tournament or terrain setups, right? Like there are some that just have amazing terrain and it's big, it's interactive, it's highly impactful on the game. Even if it has or doesn't have special rules, it's just, the kind of the tables overfloweth with interesting terrain. And then you go to some tournaments and it's like still kind of like a hill and some ruins and a woods and a tower or something like, and that's kind of it, and so like the delta there is pretty massive into how those units are going to react, right?
Agreed. And that unit needs terrain to function at its optimum capacity. So so that's what I would say. Another kind of weird winner was Daughters of Cain. I had talked about this, I think, in a previous video. If you're stacking cauldrons, which I think you still can, there's a debate right now on this. They're really good. Dave Ramsey took 4 of them to Blackout and placed like 14th with his 4 cauldron list.
So they were allowing the stacking, I assume.
Yeah, they did, and he contacted the TO beforehand, explained the situation, and like they got cleared as acceptable. So which is the right way to do it. Anytime you're going to bring shenanigans like that, you need to talk to the TO before you show up to the tournament.
Sure.
And so that was properly, and he was congratulated by, I think Tomlin ran that tournament, and he said, "Thank you for doing this, even though I have my own opinion on this. Thank you for bringing it." Or for bringing it to my attention before he showed up. And he, I think, placed 14th, which, I mean, again, there are strengths and weaknesses to that list. We've talked about it. They have no mortal wound output. No, they have no range. I think there are serious holes in that list. And I also don't think the stacking is going to last. I think that
I suspect they're going to clean up that wording pretty soon to eliminate the sort of any loophole of where the any is sitting on the owning thing or the buffed thing. As to make it clear that like, no, we meant any. And by the way, like I tend to come down more on the other side of this, but like, again, there is no right answer given how it's written right now. There just isn't.
Right.
There isn't a right answer to this. The TO has the only say. I watched an argument go back and forth in multiple Facebook groups around this and how it works around this and the enrapturing banner and all of that crap. And look, if you think there's a right answer, I don't think you're right because people
like it's ambiguous right now and how they read it. Like, and there is ambiguity in it right now, period. They're just
like people doing very good textual analysis of the exact grammar and all this, which should never be necessary ever, can still come to the opposing conclusions. And if both people using their rational minds can go through it and come to complete opposite conclusions, then there isn't a firm enough answer in the text.
Yep. And it needs to be clarified. Which it probably will be. So I have my own ideas on how it needs to be fixed, and I've sent those ideas along to the powers that be. But we'll see. So, but it does obviously need to be clarified. I think that Daughters of Cain, that's one of the most exciting possibilities to me for like fun armies because they have a lot of the tools that they need. They don't have all of them. They don't have movement shenanigans. It's one of their big lacking things. They don't have a lot of range attacks, but it's just a fun, beautiful army. And I'd love to see that on the competitive table.
It is fun. It is amazing to watch, like, 100-ish psychopathic witch elves running forward, backed up by 4 cauldrons.
Yeah, like
which has always been one of
that.
the most beautiful models ever.
Yeah, like I want to see more of that. Like I understand that people think it's overpowered. I don't care. I want to see it on the table.
Sure.
And yeah, so I think that list has some synergies that are compelling. Yeah. So that's what I would say there. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of good stuff out there. I think there's a lot of like potentially competitive stuff.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's obviously, as we said at the beginning, it's still very early, but I think that the things that are going to stay good, I think you're going to, we know some of the stuff that's going to stay good. Zinch, Khorne, Stormcast, going to stay good, going to be always at the top and competitive. I think Fire Slayers, possibly Seraphon, enter into that world. The other ones leave some to be said. I think that, by the way, Sylvaneth are going to be, like they were before, pretty darn competitive. I think they're going to have some real challenges. I think you're going to see Seraphon still be competitive, but with completely different lists. Their old lists, pack them up, put them away. Right?
I don't know. I don't know about that. I think that like they have to adapt. I don't think that it's throw everything that was.
I didn't say zero. I didn't say start from zero. I said get rid of the old list. Like it's going to be dudes with scythes now, or swords, maybe. Perhaps I've seen arguments for both. I tend to come down on scythes, but whatever. It's going to be those guys. It's going to be probably allied Stormcast. It's going to be big blocks of dryads, perhaps, right? Because
maybe some Eternal Guard, because you can summon the woods in Sylvaneth, be able to put them in on those objectives in bunkered. Yeah.
Allied sisters are now a thing or whatever, like to get the thorn shield on them.
Yep.
So I mean, there is a lot of there's I think they're going to still be competitive, but I don't know that anybody's cracked the code on them for a totally new list yet. And I think it's going to take time to figure out exactly what the right mix is with the tree people, because I think that their old style basically doesn't work anymore. I mean, they got priced out of the market for a lot of their combinations of because their battalions and war groups got so much more expensive, right? Like it just became outrageously expensive.
Multi-battalion lists. So
yeah, like they got hit really some of the hardest on the battalion increases, because it now chews up, like it's crazy. They got priced out of being able to take some of the groves, right? Because of the nature of how much more expensive they got to take the sub battalions.
Yep.
All right.
The other one that I'm going to mention, just in closing, because I have to mention it. I think that KO, sitting on their numbers, sitting on the list that I've run through, I think that you're going to see some tier 2 KO lists. I feel good about that. I think that there are a handful of competitive lists right now. If some things get nerfed, if points get changed on some things that are currently out there, I don't think that you'll see any tier 2s. I think that these tier 2s are not going to be the lists that you've seen so far. That's what I would say for KO. But I think that there are some. I think there are some competitive KO lists out there.
I would tend to agree, and I don't think they're necessarily the Arcanaut Company spam that a lot of people have talked about.
No, and I don't know that it's full Endrin Riggers either.
Right.
I've seen a lot of like 27 model Endrin Rigger lists, and that's a lot of Endrin Riggers. What I would say is that I think that but I will say that I am continuing to warm up to Urbaz as a default instead of Zilfin, because the Knight of Zeros adds that reroll ones to hit. The utility of Zilfin drops off precipitously.
Sure.
Because if I can get that in a mobile piece, that reroll, that'll hit both ground troops, which will work on like Bloodletters and all your horrors, which like Zilfin's reroll wasn't working on all those units, and so now the Azeros can do that at 80 points. And I'm already running a hero light list, so having extra heroes is a big boon. I think Urbaz brings a lot of, like, the fact they get a second artifact, that's actually really good in a meta where getting battalions is really expensive. And no, to answer the question, Nick, I don't think Thunderers with rifles will be a thing. I think most Thunderers will continue to remain on a shelf.
Okay. Well, there you go. All right. Well, that's a lot of theory. and we'll see how it all plays out. You know, I don't like. Here's what I would say. Here's my final parting thought: is we'll keep getting a trickle of events going forward. I would continue to say that we should never base too much on one single event, right? Like always take a longer view to this. Single events, even big events, can have a lot of nuance into how you get to the top tables, and luck and pairings and the scenarios and everything else. There's just like, so don't assume.
And things are going to be crazy for these opening months of the GHB2. Like weird, wacky lists are going to be winning because like the rhythm, like things haven't settled. Like the meta hasn't settled yet. People are still learning the scenarios. So like things like there will be outliers, but by mid-year, by January, and the like the world champion, like Heat 1, I think is in January. I think things will have been settled or begun to have settled by January.
Probably just enough, just in time for us to get like maybe 1 or 2 new army releases or books or something like that, and like, totally tear the world
like
up.
Like Nurgle, Death Rattle, and like elves.
Sure, absolutely. Sure. There we go. Yep. All right. So there we go. That's some thoughts we have. If you have your own thoughts or, you know, other things you want to mention that we didn't talk about that you think will be competitive, feel free to drop it down in the comments. We would love to hear from you. As always, keep trying different lists. It's an open time. It's time to experiment and have some crazy fun. That's what I say. But for me, I've got a lot of Iron Jaws to paint. So that's going to be...
Oh, yeah, Iron Jaws. Yeah, I think they're going to do well.
They'll be whatever. I don't think they'll be great, but I think Double Crusher. That's what I think. So I look forward to having... I'll be like Tom. And just for weeks now, I'll be talking about like I'm painting Iron Jaws. It's more Iron Jaws. I'll have to mix it up every so often just to keep things interesting. So there you go. But thank you all for watching. Always appreciated. We hope you enjoy our random, probably wrong and insane tinfoil hatting and musing. As always, we appreciate you watching, and we'll see you next Wednesday.